name is Chris Evan, and I'm the CEO of Survival Dispatch. I was a member of our national powerlifting team for many years and won many state, national, and world championships. Even though I'm in great shape for being 55 years old, I am not immune to father time. Most of us feel weaker and make more trips to the bathroom as we get older. U.S. Army research has led to a breakthrough for the #1 water for older Americans. It's not a special sports drink, but a mix with essential nutrients most hydration drinks lack. Keyword, hydration. These nutrients are proven to enhance muscle strength, reduce soreness, and improve bladder health. A Texas doctor leveraged this research and formulated a drink mix to help you stay strong. Click the link below for up to 44% off at nativehydrate.com/dispatch, plus free shipping and a free gift. This is one of the best deals I've seen for high-quality BCAA drink mixes. And we're back. And the rumors of John's demise have been greatly exaggerated.
They tried to get me, but they did not succeed.
I just think you've been celebrating for the past week since we won the election.
There were some celebrations that happened, brother, like hardcore. And, we'll get to it in a little bit, but the wins just keep on coming, man. Loving what's going on. Loving what I'm seeing coming out of the administration already. Just a lot of really positive things that I think we could all be excited about.
What did Trump say back in 2016? There's going to be so much winning. You're going to be sick of winning. We're just going to keep winning.
Yeah. And in the words of Ben Shapiro earlier today, I am not tired of winning yet.
Awesome. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. All right. So quickly, tonight's episode is brought to you by Native Path. Those are the branched chain amino acids featured at the beginning. I've been using them for about 6 weeks now, and they taste great, and they do exactly what they're supposed to do for branched chain amino acids. If you want to know more on that subject, just ping me. I'm happy to tell anybody all the gory details on that stuff, but I don't want to delay the start of our video too much. CCW Safe, they are the best choice bar none for self-defense coverage. We've got one of the founders coming on this Friday. It took us 18 months of due diligence going through all the different providers out there before we settled on CCW Safe, and there's some really big reasons that are really important to you that you may not be aware of. We'll share those on Friday. And Sawyer water filters. I also want to mention that I'm doing an SHTF seminar with my buddy Jeremy from, golly, I have one of those senior moments, Advantage Gold. Isn't that brutal? And that's coming up on November 21st. If you click the first link down below, you go join Survival Dispatch, gets a small stipend. It's a great way to support us without taking anything out of your pocket. If you have a large circle of friends and you think you can get them to sign up, email support@survivaldispatch.com. I will shoot you an affiliate URL, and you get $20 for everybody who signs up, including yourself. That's it for that. Let's bring on our panel. This is going to be a spicy one tonight. We've got our in-house CIA operative 007, Jeff MD. We've got our good friend Jeff Nicholas back. So as I mentioned to John and Jeff before we went live, it's going to be spicy because we got Jeff in the house tonight. And our friend Brad Wozny, who we were introduced to by General Vallely, one of the most patriotic guys I have ever met. Brad, I'm going to let you do your own introduction so you do it justice. So I don't do you an injustice, I should say.
It's an honor to be here, Chris, and with all of these fine gentlemen here and heroes. So I was born and raised in Canada, joined what I thought was served what I thought was the federal level as Canadian light infantry soldier for a little stint, and then also served what I thought was the province of Ontario as a wildfire hell attack firefighter. As you know from the show that we did on my show, the Sovereign Soul Show, I've had my red pill experiences where when I was at the corporate days of Rim Blackberry, I was also on the Pentagon DOD team for Rim Blackberry. So we had the emails about the missiles hitting the Pentagon. I had colleagues and peers there, and I was living every 2 weeks a month at West 57th and Broadway for our clients. So I was also overseeing part of the insurance and the financial services vertical. So I have a unique experience of being at ground zero during the rescue efforts going on as a representative for Blackberry, which was pinpointing people geolocating under the rubble. and flown up to the Pentagon, and then 18 stories below it just 72 hours later. And for many of my audience that knows, and yours might a little bit too, you know, I was on the Truth Tour in 2022 with Derek Johnson, myself, and Mark Atwood. We had National Command Authority fly 8 F-16s over us at 100 feet off the deck in Cheyenne, Wyoming at that location there.
Right.
Plenty of video for that. And here we are now that Canada has seized my bank accounts, emptied them, froze them, and the United States Incorporated won't let me back into America territory because I refused the jab and the mask while I was there. So, you know, bouncing around the Americas is what I've been doing the last 20 months while my family resides in the States.
So, Brad, we're going to have you back on here soon, probably this weekend, to discuss all of that stuff in more detail. It's pretty astonishing, you know, all the stuff we've got going on with illegals. And, you know, they've been coming in under Biden and they get free phones, free food, like $10,000, $13,000 on an EBT card, free accommodation. Heck, they get $50,000 for free down payment on a home in California. But we've got guys like James from Pilgrim Ammo and you that bring a lot to the table, and the immigration system doesn't want to treat you, you know, fairly. It's an injustice, but we'll get into that on the weekend. So we're going to talk cartels tonight, but I want to share some stuff on Tom Homan. So I've worked with Tom Homan in a limited capacity, but I've worked with his team in a bigger capacity. And that was the Border 911 initiative. I can tell you that they're starting a second initiative now for Border 911. So the first initiative was to raise money so that Tom could go around the country with Jason Jones, Victor Avila, a bunch of really awesome patriots and spread the word. Well, they did that. We won the election. So now we're working towards an event. Mike Sterling's going to love this, by the way, where we're going to gather at Mar-a-Lago on April the 4th, the 1-year anniversary of when we went to Mar-a-Lago this year. So we're going back to Mar-a-Lago. We got invited back again. So there's an ongoing joke on that, Brad, between Mike Sterling and I, because I usually start a story by saying, Mike, you may not be aware of this, but this one time I was at Mar-a-Lago, and it's you know, it's just
better than one time at band camp. So that's great.
It's much better than one time at band camp. So anyway, everybody knows by now that Donald Trump has chosen Tom Homan as his Border Czar. Super smart move because that will not require congressional approval. Even though we've got the majority across the board, you never know with these rhinos who you can trust and who you can't. And I mean, Tom Homan has pissed off a whole bunch of Congress critters. He's just a great guy. So let's hear what he's got to say here on this introductory video. It's pretty funny.
Run it again. And we know what happens to these children, Sean. And look, the illegal aliens coming across the border, people need to understand 31% of women that make that journey get raped by criminal cartels. Children get raped. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 that have been raped multiple times. These cartels are animals, and that's why President Trump's going to take them off the face of the earth. They've killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world. And President Trump is committed to calling them terrorist organization and using the full might of the United States Special Operations to take them out.
So because the main topic tonight is cartels, I felt that it was apropos to have Tom speak to that. So Jeff MD, I come to you first. You're on the front line. There's a lot of cartel activity in Arizona. We've had multiple discussions on the border, on illegals, and on cartels. We've had guys on like JJ Carroll, Victor Avila, who've said, you know, they'd like to see the cartels declared FTOs, foreign terrorist organizations. And then we've had other guys come on and say, yeah, that's okay, you can do that, but it's not really necessary to go after them. What are your thoughts, high-level thoughts on Donald Trump's plan to use spec ops, military soldiers to go after the cartels?
I like it personally. I mean, Mexico's not doing it, and they don't want to do it. They're too corrupt. You know, the cartels are in everybody's business. You know, you can't go anywhere without the cartels knowing. You can't do anything without the cartels knowing it. In Mexico, we lost more people to fentanyl than we lost to the Viet Cong in the Vietnam War. So how is that not a war? And if Mexico won't get their shit together, then we're going to you almost need to do blackjack Pershing, says, okay, we'll take it from here. And by declaring them a foreign terrorist organization, and when you see them slaughter 20, 30, 40 people at a time, cut their heads off, things like that, how is that not terrorism? They're not just killing people, they're terrorizing people. And they're doing it on this side of the border now too. We need to say, screw that crap. And then if it takes a Delta team to go in there and wipe these guys out, then wipe the guys out.
Well, and there have been some interesting developments over the past few months that we're going to cover tonight, but there's a internal battle going on in Sinaloa between two factions. This is actually, in my opinion, a really good time to hit them hard because they're divided. Jeff Nicholas, go to you next. What are your thoughts of Trump's plan to use not just spec ops, but military resources to go after the cartels?
Well, I think we should start with the cartel in D.C.
I told you all it was going to be spicy.
So, what's the executive action, or is it the law that was based in the 18 or late 1700s, where it was the not a foreign invasion act, but something that he's gonna utilize to start? It's an action that bypasses Congress.
Oh, the Insurrection Act.
Insurrection Act.
Not the
No,
Insurrection Act.
the foreign something isn't that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
The
it's a
foreign
foreign,
enemies.
yeah,
Act of-
Foreign Enemies Act or something like that. People that have incurred into the country can be rounded up. So that, in essence, when he activates that, he's automatically activated the military.
The
And
Alien and Seditious Act.
Yeah.
Come on now, you had to beat me to the punch.
What's it called again?
The Alien and Sedition Act.
Yeah. By virtue of that automatically triggers a lot of things that now they may need to get out and brush the dust off of the things that are going on with that. Listen, you've heard me all along say we've been infiltrated, not invaded. The infiltrators have allowed the invaders in, so it's really a dual-pronged effort. You've got to go after those people that allowed this, and you have to go after the people who are the criminals. And I think of the 20 million, and I forget who I heard this from or how I heard it, the first million that are going to go after are those hardcore criminals, right? And so there's going to be, maybe that was you, Chris. I don't know. We were in a conversation. It's going to be that they're going to say, listen, you can report here, go back, and then try to come in legally for those people who are just trying to make a better life for themselves. But those MS-13, Trendagua, however you say their name, and all these other characters, they're never coming back. And they're done. One way or the other.
I agree. I think the biggest issue that we face is a lack of resources, which is why I feel the military needs to get involved. Under Trump, we had 1.2 million law enforcement officers across the country, city PD, all the way up to the feds. That number today is 660,000. And out of those 660,000, there's a good chunk of them are post-2020 hires, which Keith Graves always rails against because their entrance requirements will drop so significantly. Then I got a couple topics that we'll bring up on that with regards to how do we augment law enforcement to accomplish this mission. But John, I'll go to you next, and then Brad, you after that.
Yeah, so I think that really we've reached a point. We've said this for probably definitely the last 4 years, but in some of the previous administrations as well. We're dealing with an invasion on the southern border. Full stop. An invasion has to be dealt with force. And if that requires military force, it's obvious that the Border Patrol is not strong enough to withhold all of this. We've seen the videos of them tearing down barriers that were erected to keep them out, and they just walk right past them.
Yeah.
Guarantee you they're not going to walk right past the United States military. And that's the real key, is when you actually bring the teeth of the military to bear on this problem, it's going to get shut off pretty quickly. And, what we have to start doing is ignoring the media narratives. I think that there's one thing that's very, very clear, because we know where the media narratives are going to go immediately. They're going to be blowing this stuff out of proportion, just like they were the reigns of the Border Patrol agents on horseback. They were beating people, you know, and all this kind of stuff. All of those narratives came out of the media. And I think it's very clear from last Tuesday's results that the media has no power anymore. They just don't. They do not. And they realize that. I mean, and we may get to this later, but did you see who got fired from CNN today?
Chris Wallace. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yep. And yesterday, I think there were several other firings that Kristen, whatever her name is, I can't remember. Another one of their main, like 3 of their main anchors were fired from CNN yesterday. Chris Wallace today. They are cleaning house because they realize that it's done. They're going to have to rethink what they're going to do going forward. And I think they realize that they're not going to make enough money to support all of these people anymore. The media is dead. So we have to start ignoring that in regards to this as well. And we just have to start doing work. We have to start cleaning house. And as Tom Homan said, families can be deported together. So let's freaking start doing it.
Yeah.
It's you know, you can call it inhumane, you can call it unloving, uncaring, but the reality is these people were willing to break the law to come into this country.
Yeah. Well,
If you don't have a criminal record, you can get in the back of the line and you can come in the right way.
Yeah.
Every time a person is arrested, if they have kids, you're separating them from their children, be it a DUI, you know, a burglary, robbery, murder. So oh, you're breaking up families. We do it all the freaking time.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
when
that's
daddy
right.
screws up, guess what? The kids suffer. That's unfortunate. But whose fault it is? Daddy's.
If I walked upstairs and beat my wife to a pulp after this live stream, I'm going to be separated from my family. 100%. Huh?
Or you'll be dead because she'll kill you.
That's true.
Right.
As my wife said, she says, I'll never be divorced again. Widowed, maybe. Divorced, no.
Yeah.
2 quick comments before I go to Brad here. Number 1, I brought this back up again, the Alien Enemies Act, because this was published by this girl after Trump announced that he was going to leverage that law. And right, just like you said, the media, we know how they're going to play it. The first sentence: the detention and deportation power poses an alarming risk of abuse and rights violations in both wartime and peacetime. That's the narrative that they're going to try and spin around that. And then the other thing, when you mentioned, you know, the Mexican government, Jeff made a really good point probably a year ago or so, Jeff MD, that somebody said walls don't work. And Jeff said, well, they do if they're manned. And if people are shooting, and he gave an example of, you know, the Berlin Wall, and it sure was effective, right? So it's
worked great for 40 years.
Yeah, there's no question that a border wall works. So Brad, your high level thoughts, you're an ex-military guy, on Donald Trump using our military to go after the cartels.
Absolutely 100% for it, Chris. And, you know, to borrow from Major General Valley, with the Operation Sinaloa he wrote and sent it to the Trump team that he and General McInerney had mentioned, Lieutenant General McInerney retired, that they figure in 7 days, 5 to 7 days, this would all be over. And to add my spin on this too, I would encourage the expansion to North America, because, you know, under the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement that went into effect 12:01 p.m. Eastern on July 1st, 2020. And through the Art of the Deal, right, what does the Trump team need to read? One of the 3 books is Art of the Deal. One of the other books that was required is Sun Tzu, The Art of War. And now what you've done is, since you've already seen in Section 27 of that act, corruption, anti-corruption, racketeering, and trafficking, for which Trudeau and other elements, now what the American military can do, working in concert with their brothers and sisters to the north of good law enforcement in the RCMP and good military in Canada, is they can expand it and lock down all of North America above the Mexico border. And internally, you can clean everybody out from the outside, and you can lock it down from the outside for air traffic, marine traffic, as well as anything else that might try to get in land-based and come in marine or on tunnels, because they have tunnels that go out to certain islands. We know about one in Vancouver Island, very well known. It's been known for 3 decades that there's a tunnel from Vancouver Island, so you can hit Victoria, go in the tunnel, and be in the mainland of the United States or Canada. And so you can lock down those tunnels as well. And I'm not even talking dumps. I'm just talking actual tunnels where you bring in transport trailers and trucks, right, that go right underneath the Salish Sea in the Pacific Northwest, as well as around Orca Island in Seattle. So those are just some of the examples. And that's very easy to do as well, right, for the capitulation tour that Trump had went through. So I consider this, if you just look, if you guys don't know, on November 2nd, it was posted that the RCMP made a 95.5 million fentanyl dose bust in British Columbia, Canada. 95.5 million doses of fentanyl with a street value of $500 million US. And that was just in a rural town in British Columbia. So Canada had FIPA, and this is also of importance as well for clearing this out. And what I'm proposing, that the expansion goes Canada, USA, right? You drop the quote unquote Canada versus US northern border, because now what you do, you've got these joint operations that tactically everybody trains and operates together almost like one. And under FIPA, the Foreign Investment Protection Act in 2016 that Trudeau's regime brought in, which are all CCP backed, the CCP has been buying land around Canada and opening military bases, including the Fujal police stations like you have in New York City. There's multiple around Canada too. So now what you're doing is cleaning out the bad operators, which are all linked into a global cartel, NWO backed anyhow, right? And from that standpoint, we literally can have that true solidarity in this movement to free North America. And I think that would set a great example for the world to do for themselves too. If they see North America cleaning themselves out, then they can borrow from those lessons learned and implement them very quickly, because there's good military and good cops all around the world. There's bad with it. What do you guys think about that?
Well, actually, you mentioned General Valley's Operation Sinaloa, this document that he wrote for Trump and the feds. It's 7 pages long, and I'm going to throw it up on our Patreon, patreon.com/survival dispatch. You can sign up for a free membership, or you can pay. Either way, I'll make sure this is available to everybody. But before we move on to the next article that I want to share on this topic, give us the Cliff Notes version of Operation Sinaloa as General Valley put it out there.
Right. Are you asking myself or?
Yeah.
Or John?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So, I mean, fortunately, I know about this by being a producer for General Valley and General McInerney. So what this is basically doing is requiring the special operations and special forces of the United States, augmented by special forces in the Border Patrol arena, to enter Mexico and clean up the cartels. Plus, you also can hit them on the financial arm immediately. Very simple. And he has that very simple plan, right? You're talking about 2 generals that went to West Point that were trained by the staff officers and the generals under Bradley, Pershing, Patton, MacArthur, just a couple of small names that we know in military history here. And then they're saying, why don't we go and we treat them like a terrorist organization, which they are. Also under Executive Order 13818, the U.S. Treasury should be seizing all the assets anyhow, right? For anybody who's involved in racketeering, corruption, and trafficking, drug trafficking, and human trafficking, 13818 gives Trump the power to go out and use the Treasury and all its resources to seize all of their assets.
Yeah,
that executive order is still in play.
Yeah, never revoked or never rescinded. The last that was January 17, 2017.
Yeah.
So I want to get into some more. That's awesome information, by the way, Brad. And again, the Operation Sinaloa document from our friend General Valley will be on our Patreon. Probably when John is running part of the show tonight, I'll get it uploaded there quickly. So I want to kind of come back to this, what we're facing right now. Go ahead, John.
I'd just like to point out we forgot to do the conflicted question.
See, this is what happens when you put me in charge of this. It's not my department. All right.
I was looking at the show notes, and the conflicted question did not get read. Just wanted to bring that up before we got to the end, and people were railing against us.
Chris had a senior moment.
I can't remember the conflicted question. It's not part of
Chris
my
Biden.
it's not part of my repertoire. So since you found it, John, you can ask the conflict.
That's Chris Biden on the beach, shuffling around, tripping over sand.
He's got his Roomba going. The Joe Biden Roomba movement's going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Conflicted question. Derek's alternative lifestyle choice would have alienated Gordon before the collapse, but Gordon wasn't as discerning in the new world. Does gender and sexual orientation affect your perception of combat readiness? Why and why not? That's a spicy question.
I chose that question on purpose because there's some big changes fixing to happen to our military on that topic. But thank you for catching that, John. I can never remember it. I just want to get going, right? I
understand.
Let's get the conversation going here. So to make this relative to what's going on at this particular point in time, a little bit of background of what's going on with the Sinaloa cartel is that, in a nutshell, El Chapo's son kidnapped this El Mayo guy who leads another faction inside of the Sinaloa cartel and took him to the U.S. I'm trying to remember where was it in Arizona, Jeff, that they got him? No, El Paso, I guess.
El Paso, yeah.
Yeah, right there. So on July 25th of this year, basically, Guzman Lopez, that's El Chapo's son, essentially kidnapped El Mayo, brought him across the border, and handed him to the U.S. authorities. And there was basically a deal cut between El Chapo and our federal government that if he could give up this El Mayo guy, that they would go easier on him as far as, it's essentially a get out of jail card of some sort. So because that happened, what that did is sparked essentially a civil war in the Sinaloa cartel. And this has now been raging since July. There have been, if not thousands of people killed. They're doing heinous things to the people they kill, which these cartels are notorious for, like cutting people's heads off and putting them in places in public and all sorts of heinous stuff that you can't show on any social media platform other than Todd Callender's Cloud Hub. Everyone else will pull it down. And nobody knows that better than our friend Keith Graves at Christian Warrior Training. The only place that he can put up his gang interdiction stuff showing this is Cloud Hub without it being taken down. So suffice it to say, that's the gist of why this whole civil war is going on inside the Sinaloa cartel, which is the largest, most powerful cartel. And, there are articles going back about 2 years. I've got a really good one that I'm going to pull up after this, but I want everybody to kind of chime in on this, where Trump and his team laid out a very detailed, specific plan of action on how to deal with the cartels, especially the Sinaloa cartel. So my next question, I meant to ask it last time around, so apologies for circling back, Jeff, but I wanted to know what your opinion was on what we can do if we declare them FTOs versus if we don't declare them FTOs. Because I will be honest with you, I've asked that question to several other people, and I haven't really got a clear answer on what extra, leverage it gives us.
Talking to me or the other Jeff?
You, yeah, Jeff MD, sorry.
I think what it does is, when you declare them a foreign terrorist organization, it quits being, it's still a law enforcement issue, but it's also a military issue. And you can leverage military units, assets, budget, etc. It'd be like if Al-Qaeda had set up in northern Mexico. Gloves are off. So potentially, can you send troops in to do raids? Yes. Does it violate the sovereignty of Mexico? You would like to get them on board with it, but if they don't, as General Pershing said, with Pancho Villa, tough shit, we're going in anyway. It also allows you to use drones. And if you used armed drones, say, I don't know, operating out of, say, Fort Huachuca in southern Arizona, which is just a stone's throw from the border, what could you do? If you had armed predators and you knew where these guys were, oh my God, 20 cartel members just got evaporated. and nobody seems to know why. There's all sorts of options there. And the beauty, if you use drones and things like that, you don't get the mess of potential soldiers being wounded, et cetera, et cetera. But they're precision strikes. You can take out cartel leadership. You can take out cartel drug processing factories. You can do a lot of damage to them, and basically explain to them in a kinetic way that smuggling drugs into the United States is not in their best interest.
Jeff, what did you call it where if you have people seeking asylum, they have to apply at the first safe country? Is that what it is?
First safe haven, yeah.
First safe haven.
Yeah, you can't pick and choose your asylum location. If you're fleeing, Afghanistan, and you're saying they're going to kill me if I stay there, and you cross the border into Pakistan, Pakistan is your first safe haven. That's where you're supposed to apply for asylum. You can't then, go to, Karachi and then hop a plane and fly to Istanbul and then hop a plane to Paris and then hop a plane to New York and go, I want asylum. No, it's your first safe country.
Okay, so based on that, Jeff Nicholas, I don't know what you think. I mean, you've got a lot more experience with this stuff than I do, but I think that I don't really give a shit about Mexico's sovereignty because they've essentially allowed these people to come through their country into our country, number one. Number two, my understanding is that AMLO, who's stepped down, they've got a new president, and the new president, though, for that matter, are bought and paid for by the cartels. So they've been facilitating all the precursors to fentanyl coming in from the Chinese. They've facilitated Hezbollah operating, joined at the hip to the cartels. So my question, Jeff, is should it really matter to us, their sovereignty, number one? And number two, if we designate them FTOs, I can see deploying the military. If we don't designate them FTOs, can President Trump still deploy military on this mission to get the cartels?
Well, we've already established that he can deploy the military based upon what he's going to, with the executive action. I do understand what Jeff is saying. There are certain, you want to call them accounting codes or mission codes that when you designate something, now it opens up a whole new options of what you can and cannot do. Rules of engagement change, all kinds of stuff happen, right? What you define as an enemy, what are the highest sources of weaponry you can use, blah, blah, blah. And so at this point, I think all gloves are going to be coming off. And if we go incur into Mexico, they'll be able to justify it by virtue of the fact that it has been an invasion and the country did nothing. And we'll actually be, if we go in and just throughout the nation of Mexico, destroy these cartels, hey, it's kind of like telling the president of, it's like his little kid, we're taking this lollipop from you because it's dinner time, right? We're going to be the adults in the room and put on the big boy pants. We'll actually be doing the people of Mexico a huge favor down the line, saving more lives by, it's going to be ugly. It needs to be ugly, and it needs to send a message, and it needs to be brutal, and it needs to be decisive. And we need to quit playing mamby-pamby when it comes to combat operations. And we need to put the fear of God back into people about the United States military and what we're capable of doing. And I mean decisive, swift, kick butt action where, they're kind of like, what just happened, right? And that's going to make people reveal themselves. The intel is going to be a lot easier to get. And, they do some decisive raids. They'll get the information. They might even be able to flush out a corrupt Mexican government. And, maybe they'll ask for us to help set up secure elections. We've got to do that ourselves. We've got to get rid of these machines, get rid of these machines globally. And that's going to go, I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but it's just one thing leads to another.
Well, we've gone from being the joke of national elections to setting the gold standard here in Florida. So we can help Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Florida, we can help.
Well,
there.
yeah. Well, then they can, they'll call DeSantis. But the thing is, oh, and by the way, Jeff, the other thing that they can't do trying to get immunity is grab onto a landing gear of a C-17 and just trying to take off from Afghanistan.
No, that doesn't count.
Claiming, I want to be an exile.
I'm on U.S. soil.
Yeah, right. So now listen, my biggest, I hear all these people, and Chris, I'm not trying to take you off course here.
No, go ahead.
I hear these people talking about we can get back to normal now and all that. We haven't seen the fight yet with the people in control.
Mm-hmm.
Our fight is coming. The dark days are ahead.
Yes.
And we need a national come to Jesus meeting. And I think it needs to be brutal. I think it needs to be obvious because the American people need to snap out of it and wake up. The fact that there are people saying, oh, we just won, life's going back to normal. Where is your head? It's not based in a reality that I'm aware of, looking at, just trying to be situationally aware, right?
Yeah.
And so these people are not going to give up power. They will drop a nuke on us and blame it on somebody just to try to maintain power. And so we can talk about the border. The thing is, we've got to get President-elect Trump to the finish line of the inauguration and keep him even insulated after the fact until we can get this burnt, this brush fire under control.
So go ahead, Jeff.
No, I mean, I think it's great we're talking about borders, but we're going to have to get through a potential Biden being gone and Kamala Harris taking office. We got to get through a bunch of false flags, putting martial law. Oh, by the way, we're going to have to maintain control. We might, we can't relinquish control. All this, that, and the other thing. We have to get through all this before we can ever unleash anybody like, Tom Homan and the general's plan and all these other great things, which I think will happen. But we have, excuse me, but we got I'm just saying crap show between now and then.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows what's going to happen in our nation. So,
hey, Jeff, it's okay. You can say shit because this is like cable.
No, I know. I'm trying to keep it,
So before I go to John here,
not too salty.
So we were, thanks to Jeff O'Donnell, we had access to the Edison data as it was being reported by precincts around the country. So we were getting data as fast as all the networks were, mainstream media. And we would see something happen and they would announce it almost an hour later because I'm sure they've got an SOP they have to go through, blah, blah, blah. At 10:45, John and I called it and said we got the 271 because we had taken the last, the big three that we needed to win, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. And at 10:45 p.m. that night, John and I both said the mission has now changed. The mission now is we have to keep Donald Trump alive. And I couldn't agree with you more on that. The other thing, I'm guessing that you caught it because you're well read, that there's already reports of senior personnel at the Pentagon scheming against Donald Trump and keeping his hands off all the military stuff.
Wow.
Well, these guys need to be defrocked of rank. They need to be defrocked and taken pension away. They need to go to jail. And, these guys need to be in Gitmo. And if you're a general officer and you were part and parcel of this,
yes,
you need to be hung for treason. Period. End of story. This is too grave. The problem with our military is a lot of these flag and general officers, they end up going out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and they sit in all these Council on Foreign Relations meetings, and they all become globalists. And now all of a sudden, we've got this corruption within, with everybody with this underlying current of bringing us together as a one world to avoid war, under the premise of avoiding war.
Right. Which in reality
which is never going to happen because it's chaotic.
Yeah.
Now, I'm
So-
not saying every general officer is that way. I
Right.
got a relative who's a 3-star, and I just hope and pray that he's one of the good guys, right? I don't know.
Absolutely. So before we go to John and Brad, let's have a look at this one. This was posted almost a year ago by Donald Trump. John and Brad, I don't want to ask you the same question after Jeff and Jeff have, covered all of the bases. So I'm going to keep the flow going here. So this is on, Trump's website, donaldjtrump.com. And here's his plan to destroy the drug cartels. And I'm just going to go through these first half a dozen bullets here. And then, John, I'll pass it over to you, and then Brad after that. So, number 1, restore all Trump border policies and fully secure the border. Number 2, deploy all necessary military assets, including the U.S. Navy, to impose a full naval embargo on the cartels to ensure they cannot use our region's waters to traffic illicit drugs to the U.S. I think that might help with all the stuff coming in from China, too, by the way. Order the Department of Defense to make appropriate use of special forces, cyber warfare, and other covert and overt actions to inflict maximum damage on cartel leadership, infrastructure, and operations. Number 4, designate the major cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, aka FTOs. Number 5, cut off the cartels' access to the global financial system. Number 6, get full cooperation of neighboring governments to dismantle the cartels, or else fully expose the bribes and corruptions that protect these criminal networks. Number 7, last one, ask Congress to ensure drug smugglers and traffickers can receive the death penalty. So I'll take it down for now, John, but if you want to put it back up again to speak to any of that, I'm happy to do so. Same for you, Brad. But based on that 7-point plan, what stands out is particularly viable to you, John? There's a couple things when I look at it, that I see, yeah, that's all good stuff, but there's a couple I see that.
Yeah, put that back up for just a second.
Yeah, it's easier to do for sure. So there we go. So it's the Trump action plan. It's these 7 bullets here.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, the border policies under Trump were working not 100%, but way better than what we have with nothing there. They had all-time lows in border crossings at the end of his presidency. Obviously, cutting off the ability to, basically by putting the naval contingent in this, it removes their ability to do what I would consider their alternative plan. Because when the border gets closed and the wall gets built, all of a sudden you've got to find an alternative method of getting into the United States. That would be obviously the sea. We have a large, border around our sea that has a lot of holes in it. So by deploying the Navy, the Coast Guard to protect that, it keeps that from happening. So that's another thing. Order the Department of Defense to use special forces. I'd like to actually give a shout out to something that just broke on the news literally in the last 20 minutes. Trump has nominated Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. So if you guys don't know him, he was on Fox News for a while. He just recently actually did an episode of the Sean Ryan Show, which was fantastic. He's a very, very conservative guy, and I think aligns very well with Trump's border policy and his use of military force. The guy won 2 Bronze Stars while on the ground in Afghanistan and Iraq. So he is a combat veteran. He has several commendations of that. So he knows what happens on the ground with these troops. I think he would be a much better option for Secretary of Defense as somebody that's actually lived it and recently lived it. But using special forces as a stopgap, as a, to get at the high value targets, that's what's been effective in the war on terror. I think it would be the same thing, be very effective in the war on drugs. This is a war on drugs that I think we were promised in the 80s and 90s that's actually coming to fruition. The reality, and I wanted to say this earlier on the previous question, these people know nothing but violence. They live a life of violence. They live a life of horrible things that they do to people. They need to understand that we are willing to do that level of violence to them. That's the only way you stop them. You start making the war that they are waging not worth the fight. It's the same thing. You go back to World War II. The Japanese army was very ruthless. They would fight to the last man. They would every inch of ground that we paid for with the blood of our boys. But when we started dropping nuclear bombs on them, they said, "Oh, this is kind of a useless fight. I think we're going to give up now." That's essentially what you're going to have to do. I'm not saying drop nukes, obviously, but I'm saying that level, them knowing that you're willing to go to these high levels of violence against them. That's how you teach these people, these animals in these cartels, that, hey, it's not really going to pay off for you if you're going to come in here and try and get that stuff into our country.
So how do we deal with the military SOPs that say when a soldier's deployed, if they shot anybody when they come back, the first meeting is with an attorney to go through everything that they did in the field, and then there may or may not be repercussions. They're counting bullets, the whole 9 yards. My brother-in-law, when he took over, he was Navy Intel, and when he ran the desk for Bayron, which of course was in the DC area, he had to deploy to Bayron and actually work on the ground to get that position. And so he was a Seminole County sheriff for 30 years, was on a SWAT team for a good portion of that time. And they were doing CQB training. And he was the first one in on one of these drills. And there was a bad guy reaching for his gun. And Bob went ahead and shot him. And of course, this is all simunition, right? And his commanding officer let loose on him and said, "You are not allowed to do that. You are not allowed to shoot until you've been shot upon. And, if you do that in the real world, you're going to get court-martialed and blah, 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 blah." And Bob was like, I've been a SWAT team guy for all these years. Somebody's pulling a gun, I'm pretty sure I'm going to shoot them before they shoot me. So I guess, and you're a vet, for those of you who are new to the podcast, John was in the Air Force for 12 years. But my point is, I don't think that bureaucracy and those SOPs change overnight. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that there's some very ingrained processes.
There may be, but those are all rules of engagement. Those are all ROIs that are specific to, that's what. And I'll let me go on a little bit of a rant here. The politicization of the military, because the reality is, you want to know the truth? Wars are ugly. They're nasty. They're brutal. They're meant to be. Wars should be horrible so that we do everything we can to possibly to avoid them. But once you're in a war, you can't avoid violence. You can't avoid the awful stuff that happens in war. It's I think it was General Robert E. Lee at the Stone Wall in Fredericksburg that said, "It's a good thing that war is so horrible because we would come to love it so." Yeah. Because it's a magnificent and horrible thing. And when you're engaged in a war, you have to be willing to do this. So what's going to have to change is the bureaucracy of the, let's account for every round fired. Let's account for every body that was stacked in this operation. It's bureaucracy and red tape that is not needed for our military, which their sole purpose is to break stuff and kill people.
Right. So I'm going to back up just because Brad's not with us here. So I'll go to Jeff Nicholas. I want to hear your comments on this, Jeff.
I realized it turned the video off. Did it?
No worries. I'll be right with you. Let me just get Jeff Nicholas's opinion since he was in the Army for 20 years as a Black Hawk pilot. Jeff, how do we overcome the military SOPs that basically say if you're deployed and you shoot somebody, when you come back, you have to immediately do an AAR with an attorney first and foremost, and stupid stuff like I just described with my brother-in-law, who is trained that if you point a gun at him, he's going to shoot you as a SWAT team guy. But then the military says you can't do that.
The thing is it's not going to be much of a change. they already train in combat arms. First of all, I would say we have to go back to the fundamentals, right? You're not a good baseball player until you know the fundamentals. We train how to kill. Now we just have to have the attitude. And I believe, Brad, I've never met General Vallely, but I believe he had a doc. Did I say it wrong?
Vallely, but you know what? You know how well spoken Doc Pete Chambers is, right?
Well, you know what? The thing is, you're the one that told me to tell him to say it was Vallely. I thought I never heard that.
No, Vallely. Vallely.
Okay.
Vallely.
Right,
No, you'll get a kick out of this before you continue on. Doc Pete is wicked smart, obviously.
I'm going to blame him for having a difficult name to pronounce. Okay?
Yeah, there you go.
Doc Pete will tell you this straight up. He cannot say General Vallely's name, and it always comes out as like a Kamala word salad.
Yeah.
God bless him. Go ahead. Sorry.
Brad knows him, but I believe we have to get back to the warrior ethos. And I believe it was him that came out with a document that said, we got to go back to realistic, kick your teeth out training and make men that are willing to look you in the eye, put a bayonet right in your eye socket.
Yeah.
And not think twice about it. And I hate to be graphic, and I'm not saying that that's what we want to strive for, but you've got to be able to have that kind of mental clarity to be able to do something as crazy as that, gnarly as that is. You've got to have a warrior mentality. We have to get women out of combat arms, and we have to go. And it's going to lead into your whole thing about gays and transgenders. I'm not going to war with the guy wearing high heels, and I know that he probably wouldn't be wearing high. But dude, you're not helping the matter here. You don't bring nothing to the table. All right, you bring zero to the table. You're mental. You need a psychologist. You don't need to be in the military. All right. And you're going to be a combat divider, not a combat multiplier. All right. And so we change all that, but then you get real leadership in there. That's not DEI. You automatically change out the command structure. You go back to, Jamie Farr was programming us for back in the day, right? Man,
listen, are you telling me that you wouldn't go to war with Corporal Klinger?
It was only in the latter part of MASH. He probably got tired of wearing a dress. He started wearing a uniform again.
He never got his Section 8.
Yeah, never got his Section 8. So anyway, I don't think it would take long. And I think what we're going to have to do is there's a couple things. There used to be a book, and I thought about this the other day, and it has to go along with Vivek Ramaswamy. In order to vote, you should be able to pass the civics test. There used to be these ASVAB books. You could read and study what the ASVAB test is. Well, I think there needs to be a civics portion of that. And you need to be able to answer some civics questions. You need to understand what it is to be American and how our government runs. If you know that you're going to go ahead and defend the Constitution, if you don't know what it is or what it says. So there's that. And I think there needs to be tryouts in the military. And yeah, we appreciate it. That's before you ever make it to basic training, so we can flush all the nonsense out, because we're going to be in the business of training stone hard killers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that part of the whole selection process before you become special forces? Like it's a competition?
Yeah, that's special forces. And I'm talking about going to basic training. I want the average Army recruit to be able to put a bullet in your brain and not think twice about it in the moment that it needs to happen.
In the old days, your drill instructor, if you screwed up, would box your ears. Now he would get sent to Leavenworth for that. But
I went to
the point of him
training.
boxing your ears is to keep you alive in combat.
Yeah. I went to basic training in 1985, totally expecting to get punched in the mouth. And, we had a guy go AWOL the first night, and they just brought him back.
Well, they would have brought him back and then given him a blanket party in the old days.
And I basically went to like, how did you get back here, and why are you here? You don't need to be here, because I just, hey, I'm some young kid working oil rigs. All of a sudden, I'm in the Army, and it's kind of like, what? This doesn't compute. You went AWOL. You know, I was always, that's like in my mind, that was like a hanging offense, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Back in the day, and it's kind of like, what the heck? So
the military's lost focus, as John said, and I've said before, their job is simple: kill people and break things. Anything that does not support that mission is a waste of time and money. In the agency, we used to say we had 3 jobs: recruit spies, steal secrets, conduct covert operations. Anything beyond that is superfluous. And it frustrates me that we spend all of our time on touchy-feely bullshit. If you're not willing to kill someone, you should not be in the military. But you know, when I deployed to right before I deployed to Afghanistan, we had weapons refreshers and quals and all this, and we went to the shoot house. And I told Chris this story, and we're in a scenario, you're in a hotel in some third world shithole, and somebody breaks in your hotel room, and you've got your Glock. What do? And there's a guy, and he's in a suit, and we're shooting sim rounds, and he comes charging in. Everybody else would shoot him once. Well, I shot him and shot him and shot him and shot him and shot him. And they said, and they stopped the exercise, and they said, why did you feel the need to shoot the guy 7 times? I said, because he was still coming at me. And they stopped. They go, listen to him. That's exactly right. You're not there for a fair fight. You're there to win. And if you got to shoot him 7 times, shoot him 7 times, preferably 8, just to be sure.
Was
he's still coming at me? I'm still shooting.
Yeah, and you did all this stuff to create an atmosphere for people to join. I remember we got deployed. There was a news I watched about when people first going to OEF and OIF, and this girl crying on it. My husband didn't join the army to go to war. He came for the college benefits. He's getting trucked out, right? Yeah. It's like, what? Yeah. Well, hey, if you live to see your college benefits, great.
Tim Walz. Whoa. Wait, I got to deploy to Iraq? Sorry, I'm running for Congress. I quit.
So Jeff MD was the person you're referring to. Was Grady Judd leading that training by chance?
What was that?
Was that Grady Judd leading the training where he asked you, or told you to shoot 8 times, not 7?
Honestly, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was the best damn shot I've ever seen with a pistol. He was sitting there popping rubber bands at 30 feet. Just
Jeff Nicholas has met with Grady Judd in person, and he's a I thought when they bought the gloves from you. Demo.
We're hopefully going to meet him. He has our product, and they like it. They like what's going on, and we're looking forward to having that meeting with him when we get down there. Because I don't want to, be saying false pretenses here. I'm looking forward to meeting him, though.
Now, my paramilitary trainer in the agency was this guy named Dutch Warenga, and he was Dutch. He was captured by the Japanese in World War II at the age of 12, escaped, and fought as a guerrilla against the Japanese until the end of the war.
Wow.
That's a tough son of a bitch. And he fought in every war ever. And when he was our platoon's leader, squad commander, and then he was supposed to go to Angola, and I ran into him at headquarters like 6 months later, and I'm like, Dutch, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Angola. And he was all disgusted. He goes, peace broke out.
So who else's name was Dutch, right?
A lot of people.
Ronald Reagan.
Oh, there you go.
1987 Predator. Dutch, that was his name. All right. So Brad, sorry that we
get to the chopper.
Went past you there, but I'll get you back into the loop now.
All good.
So since you were in the military, Brad, I'd like to hear your thoughts on these SOPs where, you shoot ammo, you shoot a bad guy, you have to do your AR after action report with an attorney, and justify your actions of what you did. Plus, like I described, my brother-in-law being told that he couldn't shoot the bad guy until the bad guy actually took a shot at him. I mean, did the Canadian military have crazy SOPs like that?
No, when I was in and went through basic, we were actually trained by our one RCR, combat veterans. So they've already done 2 tours, and they had just come back from the Balkans. We were training up for the Balkans. Literally in basic training, the ROEs were, because we were supposed to deploy over there afterward, was literally if you see a sniper and a sniper takes a shot at you, the entire squad, we call them sections, right, can empty. It's requirement. I was carrying the C6, so that's the belt fed, your light machine gun, right? You empty half a belt, so there's 110 rounds of length that go in that direction, and everybody in the section empties a full magazine on auto. So those were the ROEs that we trained with when I went in, and I volunteered to go in because, you know, I didn't make it into RMC to fly F-18s because of my vision, but I had everything else, and went, well, how else do I serve? So that was all there. So that was back then. I don't know how much of it's changed, but I was just with the Canadian military guy here not too long ago, and there's a ton of training with the Americans. So I think what's really important for everybody in the audience watching around the world, that you guys have a great American patriotic audience, Chris, is, you know, ultimately what we want to do is return to sovereignty and God on this planet. And that, by focusing on that end state, I purely believe when we do that and we put together the protocols, because a cartel, what I was looking up there when you didn't see me, was the Webster definition of a cartel, you know, and it's a group of factions and or governments who come together to control prices for a mission, an objective. And we look at that with Big Pharma and what they did in unleashing a chemical, biological, radiological weapon. You look up in what's known as the country of Canada right now, which it's not, it's a corporation, and it's actually a transnational criminal terrorist syndicate. And when Major General Paul Vallely and Norman Travesty and I sent our letters to Judge Advocate General of Space Force, Air Force, Army, JAD, USMC, and JAG of Navy in August, we designated them that. Said, by virtue of their actions and the fact that you have euthanasia going on, where one doctor here in Canada has been suppressed, I think he said it was, you're 25 times more likely to be killed in a Canadian hospital by a doctor on purpose for organ harvesting, right? Biggest organ harvester on the planet, apparently. It's the country of Canada right now. That's a cartel. And so I would really like to broaden the definition when I do this, that it's not just drug trafficking, because we know human trafficking and organ trafficking are their greatest profit centers. Mm-hmm. When you take that away, the human trafficking and the organ trafficking, and then the drug trafficking, and fentanyl is designed to kill. It's not designed to get you addicted. And that is part of the overall NWO-backed plan. And that's what we need to focus on in returning to sovereignty and God. There's that famous quote, and thank you both you men for your service too, about I fight not because of what's in front of me, but I fight because of whom I love that's behind me. And if we can all focus on that lion-hearted, heart-centeredness and man up, the men, warrior up, because as a divine masculine, our job, which we have been gifted by our Creator, is to stand in front of the women who stand in front of the children. And that is a divine, natural law of order. If we return to that, we'll very quickly flip the script on these fuckers and Operation Fuck Around Find Out. I know I can say this, which I think is kind of what the Trump team has adopted without putting it out there publicly. And imagine if everybody did that in their communities and stood there with love in their hearts, but they're ready to get after it like Braveheart did. We will tip the scales very quickly back in the favor.
So I keep saying we need to have a return to biblical masculinity.
Yes.
Yep. Absolutely. 100%.
So I was having an exchange with Doc Pete. It was Veterans Day yesterday. Yep. I thanked him, and I got the most interesting answer I've got in my 55 years on this planet. He said 3 words. He said, "You're worth it." I thought that was one heck of a response on Doc Pete's part. You know, when I said, appreciate your service, especially here on Veterans Day. And it was that short. You're worth it. I just, you know how sometimes things happen in your life and somebody will say something and it leaves a mark and it'll stick with you forever. But you meet somebody and 5 minutes later, you can't tell them what their name is. At least that happens to me. But yeah, that was one of those moments with Doc Pete yesterday for sure. So let me pull up, because I mentioned this and I want to show it just for the benefit of anybody on the panel or our audience who hasn't seen this is what we're up against right here as far as what's going on at the Pentagon. And I cannot believe that this story was broke on CNN. There has to be something, some ulterior motive, something going on here.
Top of mind for defense officials here who we've spoken to, of course, is how Trump is going to wield U.S. military power here at home. Is he going to make good on his previous pledges to potentially deploy active duty U.S. troops to American cities to engage in domestic law enforcement and to help with his mass deportation plan? That is something that officials here have been discussing in terms of how they would actually respond to that. What would a response look like if the president were to actually order active duty troops to these cities to engage in this kind of domestic law enforcement? And if he did, a former senior military official who served under Trump said that that would be very significant. It is not something that the president would be able to necessarily water down to the American people. It would be, quote, a very big deal. And another thing that officials here are gaming out is, of course, what is going to happen if Donald Trump reinstates an executive order known as Schedule F, which would essentially reclassify a large amount of apolitical civilian employees across the federal government, including here at the Pentagon, and allow them to be more easily fireable. That is something that defense officials here are scrambling to address before he enters office, trying to kind of whittle down the list of people who would be at risk of being moved into that category, because of course they're trying to create, as minimal of disruption as possible to the day-to-day operations here. But clearly they are concerned. They're having these conversations about whether there would be resignations, for example, if an unlawful order were issued, and importantly, what the chain of command would look like if Trump did issue that kind of order to deploy those active duty forces.
So I think that they're trying to lay the groundwork for a narrative that they, will ignore Donald Trump, because of this. Jeff MD, do you want to weigh in on that?
Oh, yes. They reclassify anybody who's an SIS, which is Senior Intelligence Service, or SES, Senior Executive Service, which is basically the level of a general or above. They serve at the pleasure of the president, and the president can no longer be pleasured by them and bounce them. But they're looking for the people below that, GS 14s and 15s. I was a GS 15. I wasn't, at that level. But what you can do to those people, even if you can't fire them, or at least not easily, you can transfer them. You can say, hey, you live in DC, you're GS 15, you're a colonel in the military, and you're running around DC kissing everybody's ass on Congress. Guess what? You just got transferred to Alaska, or you just got transferred to Guam, or you just got transferred to a missile base in Wyoming or Montana. Personally, I would love Wyoming or Montana, but the people who are the swamp creatures do not. So all you have to do is transfer them to someplace they don't want to live, and then let them retire. They'll drop their papers and retire. Then what you do is, once they're a civilian, you pull their clearances. So they can't work for any of the Beltway bandits. They can't go to work for Raytheon or Lockheed Martin or anybody else, because all those jobs require clearances. And that's how you get rid of them. You force them to retire, and then you destroy their ability to latch on to the government tit through a contracting job.
Sorry, but our good buddy Kevin Ramsey just sent a message to you, Jeff. So you're kind of like AOC.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Am I a hot Puerto Rican?
No, you aren't. I can give you a story.
I'm okay. I'm feeling triggered.
Oh God.
You have to file a complaint, a grievance.
That's on. You'll feel better.
Yeah. All right. So I won't go too far in depth in these next few articles that I'm going to share here. But basically, I just wanted to pull up a couple more stories on just how brutal, back to the cartels, what's going on with the Sinaloa cartel. So this one is 25 days ago, and this was an attack that the Sinaloa cartel did on a media organization that was not happy with the way the media organization was portraying them. This next one here is basically the death toll. And this is in September. So add, almost 2 months to this. Over 100 killed or missing as this civil war inside of the Sinaloa cartel rages. There's a whole bunch of articles out there that I can't show that I would love to show you that show you just how brutal it is, but we can't do that. So part of this whole border thing, we already mentioned it. Donald Trump picks Tom Homan to oversee border security and deportations. But if y'all want a good laugh here, this is how Tom Homan's exchange with AOC went.
Mr. Homan, your name is on this. Is this correct?
Yes, I signed that memo.
So you are the author of the family separation policy.
I am not the author of this memo.
You're not the author, but you signed the memo.
Yes, a zero tolerance memo.
So you provided the official recommendation to Secretary Nielsen on for the United States to pursue family separation.
I gave Secretary Nielsen numerous recommendations on how to secure the border and save lives.
But it says here that you gave her numerous options, but the recommendation was option 3, family separation.
What I'm saying, this is not the only paper where we've given the Secretary numerous options to secure the border and save lives.
And so the recommendation of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommend a zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father
Mr.
from his
Homan,
family.
with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum, you go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Okay. Mr. Homan.
Tell me that wasn't just Tom Homan is a sharp thinker. I'm going to play one more video here and then we'll get back into the discussion.
It doesn't help that she's a
A lot of people say, the talk of a mass deportation is racist. It's threatening to the immigrant community. It's not threatening to the immigrant community. It should be threatening to the illegal immigrant community. But on the heels of historic illegal immigration crisis, that has to be done. How you doing?
At the Republican National Convention this summer, Tom Homan was the proud pitchman of mass deportation.
I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country. You better start packing now.
Over 3 decades, he worked his way up from border patrolman to acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the agency known as ICE, during the first year and a half of the Trump administration. This election cycle, former President Trump has mentioned mass deportation at nearly every rally.
We will begin the largest deportation operation in the history of our country because we have no choice.
What would the largest deportation in American history look like to you?
Well, let me tell you what's not going to be first. It's not going to be a mass sweep of neighborhoods. It's not going to be building concentration camps. I've read it all. It's ridiculous.
But if mass deportation is not going to be, as you said, massive sweeps and concentration camps,
There'll be concentrated,
what is it?
There'll be targeted arrest. We'll know who we're going to arrest, where we're most likely to find them based on numerous investigative processes.
I love Tom Homan. He is just awesome.
He's the man.
Jeff Nicholas, I'll go to you first for your thoughts on this appointment. I think Tom Homan is the guy we need at this point in time to go after the cartels and shut our border down.
All I can say is he was my boss. 30 minutes is late. If you're there 30 minutes early, I would not want to piss that man off. And so I highly respect people that are no nonsense. I've never met the guy, but I have to assume he's one of those firm but fair leaders. I absolutely love the idea of his appointment. And I think you have to have somebody with his demeanor, his moxie, and his skill set to accomplish this mission, which I think he is capable of doing. Based upon my limited exposure to things like that AOC interview and so on and so forth. I mean, if he was in the Army, he would have been a general officer, and he would have been in charge of large numbers of troops, and he would have taken it to the enemy. I think it's a great appointment.
Yeah,
So
I just wish Joe Arpaio was like 30 years younger, so they could put him in charge. Yeah, like the number 2 guy. He was a no bullshit dude.
So I've been on the phone with 2 individuals that have said to me, Chris, I got to call you back. President Trump is calling me. And Tom Homan was the first one, and Michael Letts that we had on last night from investusa.org was the second guy. So Tom Homan has got Trump's ear, and Trump has a lot of confidence in him. And I've met him face to face. The guy's a pit bull. He is awesome. He's exactly what. There's more in that interview for 60 Minutes, by the way, on all the death threats he's received and everything. So I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about me. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. I don't care what you think of me. He's got a great attitude. Brad Wozny, your thoughts on us getting a true border champion in Tom Homan now?
100% of anything I've seen thus far. And back in the day, I saw that original clip that circulated a year and a half ago with AOC interviewing him. I shared that like crazy on my Telegram and the socials I have, you know, and that's the type of leadership we're talking about now. And that kind of goes back. You have that Lionheart, right? He's doing that for love of country, right? Duty, honor, country, and putting God first. And that's a man that you want to lead the charge in his role and his position. Imagine if you had that everywhere around the world right now. Nobody would have any fear for their child to be trafficked, kidnapped, picked up, murdered in a hospital, or being slipped fentanyl at a party or otherwise.
Yeah.
That's a great example right there. And that basically take a Trump example or a Tom Homan and a Major General Valley and those type of men and put them everywhere and see how amazing the world would be in 12 months.
Yeah. I don't even know if it would take that long. John, I'm going to pull up Trump was asked, I don't remember if this is the video or not, but there's this number been thrown around that it would cost $88 billion a year to deport 1 million illegals. Those two numbers, it sounds like bullshit to me, but here's Donald Trump's answer to that question. By the way, they asked Tom Homan that as well. And the girl from 60 Minutes is like, well, you know, so-and-so estimates it's going to cost $88 billion per 1 million illegals to get out. And he said, I can't verify that number or not. And she says, well, isn't that an awfully big expense? He said, what's the price on having sovereignty, rule of law, and none of these rapists and murderers from other countries here? Like, how do you put a price on that? So, John, I want to get your thoughts on Trump's comments here on that particular topic.
I spoke to the president-elect on the phone 48 hours after his victory and asked him what he believes his mandate is. He told me it's to bring common sense back to the country. As for day one, he told me, I think we have a lot of firsts, and brought up strengthening the border. I pressed him on the price tag of his mass deportation plan, which experts say could be in the billions. He told me, quote, it's not a question of price tag. Really, we have no choice. When people have killed and murdered, they're not staying here. There is no price tag.
Amen to that, John.
The reality is it costs more to keep them in this country. Dollar-wise, we're already spending more than $88 million. We're spending billions to keep them in this country, to give them these WIC cards or my brain is not working, but to give them welfare, basically, to give them welfare so that they can, rent houses. I mean, we saw what happened with the people in Springfield, Ohio, the dogs and cats thing. That was not the biggest problem that was going on in Springfield. The biggest problem was that these, asylum seekers or whatever they called those Haitians were that they were getting tens of thousands of dollars on credit cards and all of these other things to be able to kick people out of their homes so that they could pay more in rent and so that they could buy cars, so they could buy all of this stuff. That's on our dime, guys. That's not something that's made up. That's on our dime as the American taxpayer. We are looking on and seeing our money being literally burned in a pile for people that don't even belong in this country. If they want to come through into this country, they can come legally. We have tons of people that come every year that become citizens of this country. But you know what? There's a process with that. There has to be a standard for which people come into this country, and you have to be punished for breaking the law. Otherwise, it's much easier for those people to move to a life of crime when they fall on hard times, if they don't realize what the standard is. You have to know the Constitution. In fact, a lot of immigrants know the Constitution better than our kids in our schools, because they have to know that stuff to take the oath as an American citizen. That's the reality of it. We're spending way more money than it would cost to deport them.
I've already found the money for the first 4 million. So you got Ukraine.
Yeah, there you go.
You got the rural internet that never, not one person's hooked up to it. That was 40 billion.
Oh,
another 40 billion for 9 like Tesla charging stations.
Yeah, EV charging stations.
All of a sudden they have this virtue signaling about the rapers and pillagers is going to be that expensive. John is absolutely right about what it costs to keep them. All of a sudden, these guys are price conscious. Are you kidding?
All of a sudden, they're fiscally conservative, guys. Fiscally conservative. The media is fiscally conservative. It's amazing. It's a Christmas miracle.
Okay, let's go beyond that, though. Okay, these are broke-ass people coming into our country with nothing.
Yes.
Every dollar they spend, for whether it's food, gas, clothes, anything, comes out of our pockets, not their pockets, our pockets. Okay, so that's one. Look at how much these towns like Springfield, Ohio, they're doubling their student population in their schools. Who pays for that? It ain't the immigrants, it's the property taxpayers. You know, that's where school funding comes from. So and then you look at the money we send to Ukraine, the money we give to the UN, all that money could be better spent putting these people on airplanes and flying their asses out of here. But
like Ramaswamy
says, more to keep them here than it takes to deport them.
That first, what's 88 times 3 is like what,
264.
264. Though it was the first 3 million will be those knucklehead assholes in Washington D.C. We're going to take that money to get them out of D.C. because 90% of the government needs to go.
Yes.
So
and you've got the Trendiagua and Venezuelans. We won't take them back. Dump them in Mexico. That's where they came from. You know, Mexico let them in, saying, "Okay, the American border's that way." Well, okay, that's on you. So guess what? We're dumping them back on your ass. And if I were you, I'd push them to the southern border into Nicaragua, and then keep pushing them south until they're back into.
Load them onto an aircraft carrier, drive that big ass vehicle up to the border, and drop them off on the beach. Guess what?
We need the old LSC landing ship tanks from World War II.
We'll even donate the landing craft. You can have the landing craft,
and then move out.
Yep.
See, you guys thought I was crazy 6 months ago when I said I was 100% behind DEI. Deport every illegal.
Well, absolutely.
Well, and the thing is the cost that they don't care about our veterans. They don't care about any of this other stuff. Well, they are more willing to do long TV spots about the dangers of that we're causing these illegal immigrants than they are to talk about the veteran suicide crisis, the fact that we don't actually take care of our own people. The stuff that has been ranted and raved about by people like J.D. Vance for years, that we need to start looking out for our own people and make it meaningful to be an American citizen. So that it's something that people want to go through the right process to do. I mean, that's the reality of this whole thing, is that we've lost the vision of what an American citizen actually is, because we have given into this leftist ideology that America is this racist, evil country. Guess what? Most people don't want to go into a racist, bigoted country. They don't want to come here. Why is the world wanting to still come to this country?
We always used to say, if you're overseas and you need to find an American embassy, look for the one with the line around the block to get to it.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, good comment. So we've got lots more to cover, but Brad has to go. So I want to give Brad a chance, just some parting thoughts. And then we'll have Brad back again probably this weekend to talk some of his other stuff. But we've probably got at least another 15, 20 news articles to cover as fast as we can. Brad, take it away.
Well, first of all, it's an honor just getting a chance to meet all of you and be with you, Chris, again. And what you're doing is really important. It's important to the point in time where you're looking at mainstream media news, a point you made earlier in the broadcast here, Chris, and JD. The fact that you've got all these answers that are being fired because Trump came out, the team, and said a big reason, and mainstream news went crazy with this a few days ago. Big reason why he won is because you have those misinformation dissenters doing shows like this. So this is a service to truth and a service to mankind and a service to your country, which you continue to do. It's an honor. And secondly, when you're looking at the cartels and you're looking at the deportation and how that's going to happen, we look to other countries as well who have actually handled that perfectly. And you had President Nayib Bukele at February of this year showing and talking about the fact of how they got MS-13 wrapped up in his country in El Salvador and making the recently, until recent, most dangerous country to be in all the Americas to be the current most safest place, right? And they did so actually with little violence on a per capita basis. And now he's got rid of the property taxes, he's got rid of income taxes. And I was in El Salvador a couple months ago, and that place is on fire in terms of a good prosperity and a good vibration of freedom. So those are all great templates and case studies to leverage what we've got here. And the final point I'd like to share to that reporter's comment about the 88 billion and activating the military. This is a humanitarian mission. You were just speaking with Doc, and we know where he is up in North Carolina, and Todd and he did a couple of shows together on those humanitarian missions. Everybody reaches out to military and anybody who can help, and they don't care about pronoun packing and all that when their lives are on the line. And for the American people who are just waking up to this fact, as well as other countries too, with the mass invasion like this, Soros-backed, NWO-funded, your lives are on the line. And the livelihood of your future and your children's future is on the line unless you clean up and get these people out of there. So I would say get the lifeboats ready and welcome any help you can get at this point in time, whether it's in a military active duty uniform, National Guard on active duty, constitutional sheriffs, law enforcement, or other augmented forces such as Border Patrol to go in, like Tom said, and arrest them and get them out of there and do what's needed to restore law and order in your community. And I'm all for that. And that's exactly what we should be all for, which is restoring law and order, which eventually gets us to peace. And great. So thank you.
Well said, Brad. Just quickly before you go, I just want to bring these up. We've got 3 tabs here that were not in the brief, but the largest mass deportation in history was pulled out by Eisenhower. We referenced it earlier, and it was called Operation Wetback. I didn't make up the name, but there's the story on the History Channel, and here's the story on another website. It has details. And then if you're liberal and you don't believe the first 2 websites, here you go, Wikipedia, Operation Wetback. And so I've seen 2 numbers quoted, 1.2 million or 1.3 million illegals were, sent
There
out.
was 9 million deported back. I forget which president it was, but it was back in the day when, right around the time prior to the Depression. Was it Wilson?
Woodrow Wilson?
About 9 million deported.
It's after World War One.
It was after World War One?
Yeah, because we mobilized a lot of guys got drafted into the military. And here in Arizona, we had a lot of Mexicans came up to backfill people to work in the mines, the copper mines, the silver mines. But it was supposed to be temporary. And when the war was over, they didn't want to leave. And that's when they came in and go, yeah, you kind of got to go back. You were temporary workers. It's done. It was a national emergency, but you got to go home now.
Okay, yeah. So 1919, 1920.
Yeah.
is the story of it. But when I searched on that, there's another one that came up. It was also under Woodrow Wilson, called the Palmer Raids. The Palmer Raids were a series of raids conducted in November 1919, January 1920 by the United States Department of Justice under the administration of President Woodrow Wilson to capture and arrest suspected socialists, especially anarchists and communists, and deport them from the United States. We need that too. We need that level.
This is a not to go a different direction.
Gentlemen, I've got to head out. God bless. We'll see you
Thanks,
again.
Brad.
Okay, Brad.
Go ahead.
Good talking to you, brother.
Thank you.
Why in the world would you be allowed to run for office when you have a worldview that's the antithesis to the Constitution? If you're a socialist, or you're even Islamic, and you're a communist, you should be disqualified from running for office, because the Quran says, lie, do whatever you need to do, and ultimately you have to follow what your imam says and all this other stuff.
Right.
I don't see how this is coalescing with what we call a constitutional republic. And I also get tired of hearing the word democracy. I loathe the word. We are not a democracy.
Never have been.
It's mob rules. That's
Yeah.
all democracy. You know, the electoral college system is absolutely brilliant. So I see you just put a link in the brief there, John. Go ahead. Let me see here. Was it the one on? No, it's the next one over. Okay, Western Lensman. Let me pull this up. Take it away, John. This is on the Secretary of Defense.
You're mute, brother. You're mute, John.
Scroll down to the video and just play the video.
Okay, gotcha.
There's a chance to course correct it, but it would take the new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire. You got to fire the chairman of Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it. That's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, I don't know, 1995, let's just make those the standards. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. And there's lots of other ways in which you could identify who gets promoted and what, but there's an ethos change. I mean, there's a reason people don't want to serve, because they don't trust that their senior leaders are going to have their best interest in mind in combat. I know there were mistakes made on our tours all over the place, but I, at least for the most part, had a sense that my senior leaders were committed to the completion of the mission for the right reasons. And maybe there were strategic differences and all that other stuff, and it wasn't always perfect, but that trust is broken, and you have to reestablish that trust by putting in no-nonsense war fighters in those positions who aren't going to cater to the socially correct garbage.
Go ahead.
That is dude, that's almost like countering every point of the episodes that we've done on what's wrong with the military, Chris.
Yeah.
That's like almost down to each subject of what we've talked about. The recruitment commercials of My Two Moms, the other crap, the woke ideology that's infesting. And I said this at the time that we did those episodes. It's in the officer corps. It's in the institutions and the universities, the West Points and the Annapolises. It's in there. And that's why you're seeing all of these officers come out where they're underneath their uniforms, they're wearing Communism Will Win t-shirts. That's the kind of stuff that we're seeing out of the military, and it's coming from the top. So you have to wipe that out. You have to go scorched earth on the officer corps that buys into this ideology. And it's just like anybody that's been in the military, in basic training, what the first thing they do? They make a couple of examples, and then you realize, oh, these guys are willing to go there. Guess what? Everybody else falls in line after that. And that's what needs to happen. That is absolutely what needs to happen. And one of the other things that's really interesting about Pete Hegseth is that he was actually activated to defend Washington, or to be a part of the military presence in Washington around January 6th. He has a tattoo on his chest. You can actually see it if you watch the full Sean Ryan episode. You see parts of it in his partially unbuttoned shirt. And it's a cross from ancient Christendom. It's like what they put on a shield. You know, a knight would put on a shield in an ancient Christendom army, you know, something like the Crusades or something like that. It would have been something that was on a shield. They actually labeled it a white supremacist emblem, a Nazi emblem, and he was actually removed from the detail to be activated in Washington around January 6th. That is the level with which these leftists will do. They will identify people based off of their religious beliefs, and if they are counter to this communist ideology that is infecting our military, they will remove those people. And that's what happened. And there's tons of other things that he talks about. It's a really, really good episode of Sean Ryan, but that's the new Secretary of Defense. And I am here for it.
Was
I'm
he
popping
enlisted or an
popcorn right
officer?
now. Huh?
Was he enlisted or an officer?
I think he was an officer. He was a guardsman, but I think he was an officer. He did go to a military. Or actually, he went to Harvard.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we need. I hate to say. Yeah. I don't hate to say it. We almost need to go back to the Roman way of doing things. I mean, Caesar did not put up with shit. And, you know, the Romans had this: if there was a unit that showed cowardice in battle, they would decimate them, which means they killed every 10th guy. But you know what? That unit never had cowardice in battle again. I'm not saying we should go to that, but you need to be harsh, because if someone is, for lack of a better word, a pussy in combat, other people die because of that.
We need George Patton types.
Yes.
We need the guys that are going to go in there and be like, get these cowards out of here. They don't need to be around the men that have been wounded in battle.
Yeah.
He got reprimanded for that.
Yeah. Oh, he lost a grade and got relieved of command, but they put him back in because they needed him after D-Day, because they needed a real general.
By the way, we want to
lead troops and win battles.
Well, and that's the reality of it, is like, honestly, had that not have happened, the D-Day probably wouldn't have ended up being as successful as it was, because they were following Patton. The Germans were following Patton because they knew his ability. And they said, they can't be just removing their best general from the battlefield. Something else is going on. And so they framed this entire intelligence operation around Patton, even putting inflated tanks around him and all this other stuff.
The invasion of the invasion point was the Pas de Calais.
Yep.
Which actually made sense. It was the shortest distance from England, blah, blah, blah. And when Normandy happened, they thought it was a diversion, because the real attack is going to be wherever
because Patton's going to lead that real attack. That's how much they feared him. And we need generals like that. We need generals
like Norman Schwarzkopf. We're going to go in, we're going to isolate them, we're going to kill them.
Yep. And look at how successful Desert Storm was under his command.
Oh my God.
It was a complete wipeout.
Yeah.
You know, that's the kind of wars that you have to wage. And that's what I mean is, like, war should be terrible and magnificent all at the same time. It should be something that just, total war. We haven't been at total war. Even Desert Storm wasn't total war. Really, since World War II, we have not engaged in total war.
Well,
we don't want total war.
But
I agree.
You know, but you know, when I look at what's going on in Israel now, and they're slaughtering Hezbollah and Hamas and people, they need to stop. No, they don't. Yeah, I don't think we should be. You know, our troops should be there. But you know what? If what happened to them happened to us, it would be like 30,000 people being killed in relation to your population.
9/11 times 10.
30,000 people were killed. Well, we'd probably wipe out entire countries, and we should. Because if you don't, they do it again.
Well said, Jeff. So I'm going to bring up the next article So we talked about how there's this move afoot in the Pentagon to prepare to undermine Trump, refuse orders, et cetera, et cetera. But look at what our allies are doing in Europe. Britain, France, and Poland conspire to undermine Trump's Ukraine peace mission. Tell me they don't work for the military-industrial complex.
And let them pay for everything, but they won't because they're cheap asses.
So I can't remember if it was Trump or maybe actually I think it was JD Vance said recently. He said if European countries want to censor Americans and they want to censor X because Elon took that capability away, that's fine. We're not giving you any more assistance through NATO. You're on your own.
Yeah.
If you want to do business with America, you have to respect our values and beliefs. And y'all don't have anything close to what we have for the First Amendment. So too bad, so sad, screw you. So I don't disagree with that, but I'm sure we could have a long discussion around backstabbing, but here's another example of it. So here's this asshole, John Thune, discussing how, he hoped that we got better options than Trump. Listen to this.
Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. Would you support him?
Well, I'm hoping, Leanne, to have other options.
And now he's under consideration, to be.
He's running for majority leader.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's total BS. So, by the way, for those people who have the brief, they know now we're kind of into, the headline news updates. We're past the cartel piece of this broadcast in particular. So I just got a bunch of things. I'm going to whip through a whole bunch of them quickly and then give each of you an opportunity to comment on whatever tweaks you out of all of them. By the way, I have that holster. That's a VersaCarry. Very nice. Made in Texas. So Trump announces push for national concealed carry reciprocity. That would be awesome because right now, when we leave Florida, as soon as we get to the PA New York state line, there's no entering New York with our guns if that's our destination. We could pass through potentially, but national reciprocity sounds really, really good.
Yep, and I just put in the chat. I just did a video on this on our YouTube channel on my thoughts on this. It's just a short 5-minute video. Go over there, watch it. If you like what I say, like it and subscribe to our channel. It's really, I think it's a big, big deal because I think what he's doing strategically is he's trying to enact a court battle that will lead to the Supreme Court ruling on national reciprocity. And I'm still kind of wondering how the liberal states are going to react to it because it is a very smart strategic move.
Yeah,
it is. They'll deny it. So actually, there's a whole bunch of tabs on that I have open here and that are in the brief that get into some funny ha-ha stuff, instead of all the doom and gloom, some stuff that'll actually make you laugh. So look at Bill Maher, October 15th.
Am I going to worry about it? First of all, I'm not going to worry about it, Phil, because he's not going to win.
So you think he's just worn it out? You think people are just going to get fatigued?
Enough. I feel
category fatigue.
I mean, it's just going to be, we're talking about a few 100,000 people perhaps, but I think it's going to be a little closer than that. First of all, she's definitely going to win the popular vote, as Democrats almost always do now. But I think she will win. I think he will, of course, go batshit insane as he always does. He won't accept it. His followers, I think I don't think their heart will really be in it as it was in 2020. Some of them, there's lots of people who will always be in the bunker with Mrs. Goebbels taking the poison and giving the poison to the children because it's better than living in a world without National Socialism. I make an analogy, but I don't say he's a Nazi. But I think for most people, it's just fatigue. Yes, I think it's time.
All right, I want to stop on that point because I have a question for all three of you. Why does anything that guy say matter? Who is he? Has he ever been elected? Is he some great oracle of knowledge? Like, why does anybody give a flying fuck what Bill Maher says?
Okay, look, I have followed him for years. Okay, he's a good comedian. He's a funny guy. And then he got a show, so he had some influence. But Bill Maher, yeah, he's a screaming liberal, but he's an old school liberal. He's not a progressive. He's a liberal. And he has even been disgusted by a lot of the bullshit, even on his own show. They wanted to put Liz Cheney before a firing squad. And he even said, okay, cut the bullshit. That's not what they said. So he's definitely far left of center, but he is sane. He's not one of these who's like, anything Trump says has to be a lie. If Trump said, okay, it's noon and the sun is shining, people would say, oh my God, he's lying, but more, he's being forced to accept reality, and it's funny to watch.
It is funny. Jeff,
well, he's also an Epstein. He's bragged about being an Epstein's Island though too.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's a scumbag. Don't get me wrong. He's a Hollywood scumbag.
So he gets no credibility at all in my book. If you're willing to bragging about what he's done there.
Yeah, it's bad.
He's got no.
It's bad.
Look at the way he was responding to Dr. Phil. I mean, he's sitting there as if he's like the spewer of all truth.
Yeah,
he couldn't have been. It's an arrogance. They just have an arrogance about him.
Well, but let's be honest. In 2022, there were a lot of people on the Republican side that had an arrogance. It's going to be a red wave. We're going to take over everything, and it didn't happen.
Right.
And people can be wrong. Let's allow them to be wrong, and we can point it out and point and laugh. But people are not. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is 100% accurate. So, if someone's going to be able to eat a little crow, let them eat some crow.
Right. But it's not about being right or wrong. But most people have no clue how close. If we would have lost this election, we would not have had a free and fair election ever again, and our country would have been over.
That's right.
So this is not just about being right or wrong in an election. This election was about the survival of this nation.
100%.
Yeah. We've been talking about being hardcore military, look somebody eye and do all that. People have
Bill Maher is nobody. He is
what this election was about.
Yeah. And here, so real quick, I want to address something. If people think I was advocating for total war earlier, that's absolutely not what I'm advocating for. I'm just saying that we don't understand that, what the level of total war is, because we haven't had a total war since 1945 in this country. I understand the implications of total war, and it's not anything anybody would want to see. As far as Bill Maher goes, Bill Maher is a representative of legacy media.
Yep.
He absolutely is that. He's been that for decades. And there is one thing that is insanely apparent after last Tuesday. A week ago, the American people stood up and said, we don't give a crap what legacy media says. We don't give a crap what narrative you are pushing. We're going to go to the polls and we're going to elect the person that we think is best suited to lead this country forward and to set America back on the path to becoming what it once was, a great nation, the greatest nation on the face of the planet. And that was essentially the middle finger that was given to the news media. What does the news media do? They aren't being introspective right now. They're not thinking, well, how did we get it wrong? Was it probably wrong to call somebody who's not even close to Adolf Hitler for 8 years? Was it a bad thing for us to engage in the lawfare and push lies that were trumped up by a counter party that was engaging in political lawfare, and then to see so many felonies, so many lawsuits, so many indictments that were unfounded in any thread of truth? No, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to actually go to the new form of media where people actually have to sit down and articulate what they believe and talk about what they believe and do it for a long period of time rather than a 20-minute soundbite or a very, very canned interview. What you witnessed last week was the death of mainstream media. And that's why in 5 years, probably less, and probably in 5 months, Bill Maher is not going to really have a voice because everybody's turning against it. Everybody's fed up with it. Why do you think he has his own podcast? Probably because he sees that that's the future. The problem is he does not have the audience for this outside of the crazy far left loons that he doesn't even identify with.
Well, see, my point is, if somebody on the far left, like Bill Maher, starts to have a come to Jesus moment, now he's an atheist, so he won't have a come to Jesus moment, he'll have a common sense moment. Don't discourage that. I mean, Tucker Carlson was a Democrat his entire life, and he woke up. You know, Elon Musk, by his own definition, was left of center, but he kind of had an epiphany and he woke up. Don't discourage people. It's almost like if someone says, maybe the Bible is right. Maybe it is a good thing. And don't discourage that. If they don't agree with all of it, just say, okay, study it, keep going. You're moving in the right direction. Don't discourage a movement in the right direction. Do I like Bill Maher? No. He's done some funny stuff in the past. I've seen some old movies. But at the same time, don't discourage people who are starting to wake up. Let them wake up and give them encouragement to wake up.
I'd like to see him have a come to Jesus meeting like Russell Brand. No,
Russell Brand, he was a whack job atheist. Everybody's evil, and now he's getting baptized. Don't discourage a movement in the right direction. It may not be as fast as we want. It may not go as far as we want, but it's movement in the right direction.
It is a journey. It is a journey, and one of the things that was so unique, I tried to go back and catch some, because we had the big long stream on election night. I went back and tried to catch some of the highlights of some of the other people I watched. So I got on Daily Wire's stream, and they had Dr. Jordan Peterson on at the very beginning of that. He said something that just really stuck with me. I've been a Christian most of my life. I was born in a church parsonage, came to know Jesus as my savior when I was like 8 years old. So I've been on this walk for a long time, but one thing that he said that hit me so hard was, he's like, when I'm reading the Bible, he said, every time I come across something that I can't quite square, that's like I struggle with the idea, he's like, it's always my problem and never the scripture's problem. It's always that I need to transform something in my life that fits it. And then after I do that transformation, I go through that transformation, guess what? The walk's easier. So it's a process. Nobody gets there overnight. And so, yes, we should not discourage that. We should always encourage that people, maybe they're going to have a road to Damascus type moment where God just hits them upside the face. Yeah. Or maybe it's going to take them 5 years and they're going to have to. But here's the thing that I will always say. Anytime somebody starts searching truth and just says, I'm going to search truth, no matter where it leads me, I'm going to look for the truth. It almost always leads them to God.
Yeah. Let them find their path at their own rate. In their own time.
So there was a study released recently, and it basically said those people who support Donald Trump will still engage in a conversation with somebody in an amicable manner, whether they agree with them or not, or if they agree with 20, 30, 40, 50% of what they're saying, that Trump voters, that's how they handle it. Kamala voters, on the other hand, if you don't agree with 100% of their ideology, you are the devil incarnate.
Chris, there was a video that this black guy, I wish I would have saved it. It was on X earlier, where he literally, he's some kind of influencer, but he literally did a video that said, I'm voting for Kamala, and here's why. And another video to say, I'm voting for Trump, and here's why. And he said, when I said I was voting for Kamala, all the Trump supporters said, you know what? Because he works with youth. He works with young men. And he said, all the Trump supporters were like, hey, we disagree with you on this, but we're still going to support because we believe what you're doing is really good, and we're still going to support and donate, and we hope someday that you see the light and all this stuff. He said on the opposite end, he said hundreds of people unfriended me, said that I was garbage, said that I was worthless, said that I was just a horrible person.
It just shows you the spiritual
disagree to disagree.
Yeah, 100%. So, Jeff, I know you got to go. We've still got probably a dozen news stories to get through here, but here's an example of words matter that I put up on the screen here. So this is what happens when you tell people that a dictator will be your next president. Anthony Nephew allegedly murdered his 2 sons as well as his partner before turning the gun on himself. Allegedly had become increasingly concerned about the prospect of a Trump-led government. Words matter. We have an epidemic of mental illness in this country. And as far as I'm concerned, the mainstream media has blood on their hands for stuff like that. And that's not the only example that I've come across. John keeps saying death of the mainstream media. And I just want to comment on that. It was just released yesterday that Donald Trump's strategy. So the political, geniuses out there, the strategy is always the same. You chase high propensity voters. So that means people who are highly likely to go and vote. Okay. And because those are the people you want the people who will go vote. But Trump's campaign focused on the low propensity voter, the people who are disenfranchised. And what did we say the entire election cycle, thanks to Jason Wilson? When you go to vote on November the 5th, take somebody with you who doesn't normally vote. That's a low propensity voter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, Jeff, before you go, I want to pull up this one graph here. Golly, I thought I had it up here somewhere. Dang it. It's a good one on the curve in Wisconsin. Let me see if I can quickly find it. Just give me a second here. This is worth looking at before you leave. And dang it. Of course, our brief is so big tonight, it's not easy to find. Okay, I think this is it. Maybe not. Here we go. Got it. Okay. Apologies for that. This was a little bit out of order, but this guy actually wrote pretty extensive stuff on this, as far as what the graphs show. And he's got all these buckets, which I'm not going to read through them because I know you got to get going, but check this out. Okay. That's the actual graph from the vote last Tuesday in Wisconsin. They tried to do the exact same cheat as they did previously. And what's crazy is that there's a second graph, and I don't know if it's on this page again or not.
Is it from Arizona?
No, Wisconsin. There's a second graph. Let me see if I can quickly find it because it's worth it.
Anybody in their right mind will tell you someone who campaigned did not get one delegate, and when they first campaigned got 1%, less than 1%, somehow managed to garner 65 million votes.
Well, how do you explain?
I know we have a mental health crisis in this country, but we don't have one that.
Well, how do you
5 million people who voted for her?
How do you explain 15 million voters disappearing? That, the Biden campaign, the math's easy. In 2020, forged about 20 million votes, and 5 million of that went to Donald Trump this time around, and 15 million disappeared off of Kamala's totals. There's 15 million.
Rapture, God did it. He
let me tell you. If we got rid of these machines and we went to paper ballots and one-day elections, the Democratic Party would fail to exist.
Yep.
100%.
And all these school superintendents and district attorneys and these woke mayors and these woke governors and all these communist pieces of what would not be in office.
So have a look at these graphs. Okay, let me just pull them up separately. So this is the graph, presidential race last Tuesday night. They had this huge influx here of cheating votes. And thankfully we got enough people out there that we made it too big to rig, which was the goal, right? And then turn around and look at the Senate totals. for Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Well, they did the same thing in Arizona too.
Yeah,
with
but
Kerry Lake.
as we know from 2020, this straight up jump, that's complete bullshit.
There isn't a single place in this country. There isn't a single place in this country where 100% of the votes go one way. Even in the most blue areas, you'll have 18 to 25% go the other way. It's just the way it works.
Yeah. So, and I'll leave you on this, Jeff Nicholas. So check this out. These are the vote totals supposedly in Arizona. And so you've got 3 million votes for the Senate, but 3.1 million for the president. You got 1.648 million for Trump, but 200,000 less than that for Kerry Lake. And
that's bullshit.
Like, these numbers don't add up. This is a complete fabrication. It is
and I hate to say it, I blame a lot of this on Mitch McConnell.
Absolutely.
He gave Kerry Lake $0. The previous election, he gave Blake Masters, who I had in my house, and we did a fundraiser for him. He gave Blake Masters $0. The Democrats are pouring tens of millions of dollars into these races, and Mitch McConnell, who controls the Senate election fund, gave zero. And this year he gave $0 to Kerry Lake, and he gave $0 to Brown in Nevada,
and 0 to Ted Cruz.
Yeah, he is a scumbag who needs to go.
He needs to be arrested.
Yeah.
Well, what's really bad is his entire wing of the Senate. Like, we don't need Thune, we don't need Cornyn to replace him.
No.
Rick Scott is the best of the three that are up for it. I would honestly rather have somebody to the right of Rick Scott.
Yeah, Rick Scott is the best horse in the glue factory.
Yes.
Rick Scott is the lesser of three evils, but he's a piece of shit. So he was convicted of the largest Medicare fraud, $300 million. His first week in power as governor of Florida, he had a major conflict of interest. He put out an executive order requiring drug testing for welfare recipients, and he owned the largest chain of drug testing, labs in the entire state. And then when Hurricane Matthew hit us, the average price for a solar PV system for the average house was $30,000. Okay. And FPL and Duke, in an emergency session with Rick Scott, said, you got to tell people they're not allowed to use their solar systems when the grid goes down because one of our line workers might get electrocuted. We have the strictest building code in the country now. The hurricanes we had 2004, 2005, our building codes now are used around the world. They're so strict. And we already required in the building code that if you had a solar system and the grid went down, it had to flip a transfer switch and disconnect you from the grid. That was already code, and every friggin' place had that, right? So here's what their answer was. Their answer is that you can't have solar when the grid goes down unless you have a battery backup to simulate the grid being up. Well, guess what a solar backup batteries cost for the average house when Hurricane Matthew hit us? Another $30,000. So they basically took all these people who'd spent $30,000 on a solar system and said you can't use it unless you spend another $30,000 on a battery backup. They doubled the price of it and they squashed their competition, and Rick Scott pushed it through. Rick Scott is the worst. He's a scumbag, but he's not as bad as Cornyn and Thune. So he's definitely the lesser of three really evils. Jeff, appreciate your time.
Good night, guys.
All right.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks,
All right.
Jeff.
See you, Jeff. Thank you. Anyway, so we can move on from there. I'll try to get through some of the balance of stuff that we have here, but this one will make everybody laugh. This is, somebody on how do you move forward when you have friends and neighbors and family members who voted for Trump.
The thing that I'm grappling with is that someone was elected who ran a campaign that was openly hostile, openly racist, xenophobic, misogynistic, transphobic, everything. And
bullshit. None of those things happened.
And yet now the election's over. folks accept the results. But now, how do we move forward when we know there are people have people in their families who voted for him? They work with people who voted for him. They live next to people who voted for him. How should we deal with those neighbors, co-workers, family members?
Well, first of all, we have to remain passionate about protecting these most vulnerable people. You're absolutely right. If this new president does half of what he says, there will be so many of them in danger. I think the way to move forward in a family or in the whole culture is this. Every religion in the world has some version of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love your neighbor, even love your enemies, those of us Christians have. And here's the trick. Loving has little to do with liking. You don't have to like someone to treat them like the child of God they are. You can argue with them, you can fight with them over all kinds of things, but you can't not treat them as a person of worth and respect that God created them to be.
And Dr. Jackie, Reverend Lewis, last question to you. We have less.
All right. So advice, John, you go first. What's your advice to Tinkerbell there?
Well, that's a perfect name for those two effeminate males. That is the biggest load of crap. I hadn't seen that before, but just reacting to that is this. Well, let me first address the fact that Trump has the most diverse administration, both in thought, and ethnicity. And I mean, he's not hiring people based off of their race. He's not DEI hiring, but you know what? He just nominated a Hispanic to be Secretary of State in Marco Rubio. I mean, he's got all of these different. He's got a Democrat woman that helped him get elected. He's got a lifelong Democratic royalty in RFK that's come together with him. Do we not care about diversity of thought? Well, the left doesn't, because they want monolithic thought. They don't want diversity of thought. And so we have all of these people coming into an administration. You look at his electorate, and I sent this to you right after the election when I was going through the numbers and looking at the makeup of the electorate. I always like to do that post-election to see what it looked like. It's a nightmare scenario for the Democrats. If the Republicans can latch on to what Trump latched onto, they will not lose another national election for 20 years. Because when you look at 43% Hispanic vote, and we can expand what we do with the Black community if we just continue on this path. Not a system where we give people stuff based off of their race or ethnicity or gender ideology or whatever. We give people stuff based off of the work that they put in and the merits that they bring. Going back to even immigration, we need a system of immigration because we need to turn away the people that are not going to help our country. I know that sounds brutal, but you know what? The people in Haiti are not to the level where they can actually contribute to this society. They're going to be a complete and total suck to the system. They are. And that's hard to say, but you know what we need to do? We need to help them build their country up and not import them to our country. We need to help them and teach them how to build their own country up. So you have all of this stuff. And let me also address this as a Christian. Love is not nice. And the kind of love that guy is talking about, that bishop of the Episcopal Church, which is a absolute shambles of what it used to be. Half of their bishops wear rainbow flags and as tunics in their services, and are doing all of this gender confusion, calling God, transgender and all this other stuff. It's a garbage church, and it's not biblical. That's the problem. And they're also pushing this whole love is nice. No, love is not nice. Do you think that I'm nice when I discipline my children? No. My kids know that I love them, but guess what? If they get out of line, sometimes you have to discipline them in a more harsh way.
Put them back in line.
Huh?
Put them back in line.
Exactly. And that's the thing that we miss. And it's something that the modern church gets completely wrong. And it's not just the Episcopal Church, it's the church as a whole. that Jesus was always loving. Do you know he was also violent when he went into the temple? He actually fashioned a whip. If you read the Gospel of Mark, he actually went out and fashioned a whip and beat people because they were doing wrong. And they said that he was love. So I don't know. Maybe we got a misconception of what love is. And do we love our neighbor? And that translation of neighbor is actually talking about the people that live close to you, not people from other countries. God actually established his people in a nation with borders. It's the first thing he did. So what are we talking about? It's just garbage leftist ideology intertwined with what they want religion to be, what they want Christianity to be. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox, but
it's all good. I just counted. We got 14 tabs left to go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to whip through them, but I'll stop on the ones that are interesting to comment on. Not just we know what the answers are for certain things. So hockey legend Wayne Gretzky triggers lefties by joining Trump at Mar-a-Lago, wearing MAGA hat. There's a picture here somewhere. That's Wayne Gretzky right there in the hat. And I think there's a picture with so this is his daughter, her husband, and his son there. I mean,
notice conservative women are always hot.
Yeah.
Way higher. No offense to that. Yeah.
And athletes tend to be conservative because athletics is merit-based.
100%. Yeah. So anyway, no surprises there. And then look at this clown here. Friggin', Mark Cuban.
That's not Mark Cuban. That's Rachel Maddow.
Oh, I apologize. You're right. But
aging lesbian Mark Cuban.
He went and deleted every single pro Kamala, tweet. And then when he was called out on it, he said that he's been doing this post-election since 20-something. I don't remember when. But this guy, he's
going to make so much money with Trump. That's the thing that's so annoying about that. He's going to make so much money under Trump.
He's begging Trump for a cabinet position, and clearly that's not going to happen, right? Yeah. Okay, next one here. This is crazy. So $1 billion was donated for Kamala's campaign, and she's $20 million in the hole, which, by the way, Donald Trump offered to pay off. What a great, rubber face in that deal. But did you see when Beyonce was on stage and there was no teleprompter, so she sat and read off the phone? It was horrible. She got paid $10 million. And then you got the next one, Megan the Stallion, $5 million, Lizzo, $3 million, Eminem, $1.8 million. There's your $20 million. But how much do you want to bet that a portion of that, maybe 50-50, is a kickback to her? In other words, hey, come up on stage, read this thing, we'll send you $10 million, and then you send me $5 million back after, I step out of office.
And here's the thing. What does that also show you? That those people really didn't support her.
Well, one, they didn't support her, absolutely. And two, she's got nothing. There's no substance.
Yep. There's no there. There's nothing there.
Yeah, that's why she lost. Absolutely. All right. So next one here. So this is really funny. So they've chased Trump and Elon with lawfare, all these scandals, the Steele dossier, Russia, and everything. And here's what these pukes have to say after they've done this to Donald Trump for years. I got 3 emails today, by the way, from followers who were reacting to my comments that I wrapped up on last night and said, there will be no unity. There will be no olive branch. There will be no reconciliation. There's no reconciling with people who think a guy can cut off his dick or not and declare himself a woman. There's no reconciling with people who counsel youngins to cut off body parts. There's no reconciling with surgeons that will actually cut off body parts. They have gone too far, and there's no coming together, and fuck your unity is my message. But I got 3 nice emails today saying it was refreshing to hear somebody actually say that for a change. Just hang out with me for a day. You'll get sick of me saying it. Anyway, Listen to this guy.
The tension you described that the New York Times reported on within the transition team was described to us as a battle between the normies and the crazies. Although, of course, the people we're talking about would disagree with that characterization. We focused on a couple of lawyers. One's named Mike Davis. He's a very conservative, kind of a bomb-throwing provocateur who used to clerk for Justice Neil Gorsuch. He's an advisor to the transition team, and he has been out there publicly saying that Donald Trump should prosecute people like the Attorney General Tish James and Jack Smith, the special counsel, that his Justice Department should do that. He's actually articulating which crimes they should be prosecuted for, and he's making no bones about that. The other person we talked about is Mark Paoletta. He is the former general counsel of the Office of Management and Budget in Donald Trump's first term, and he has been out there not specifically advocating that the DOJ should prosecute individuals, but he is justifying the idea that the president can order the Justice Department to investigate and prosecute specific cases. So he's laying the legal groundwork. Now, the thing about that is that would violate 5 decades of norms post-Watergate, which said that the Justice Department should be independent from the president, that the president should never say, go investigate that person. These people are suggesting that Donald Trump should be able to do that with his Justice Department. And as a legal matter, they're right. We're talking about norms here, not laws, these post-Watergate strictures. And so it's raising a lot of questions and getting a lot of people very nervous. The one thing I would say is we should wait and see exactly who gets appointed to these roles and what exactly they're going to do, because, you know, it's very easy for people to throw rhetorical
Anyway, at the
bombs
at the end of the day with these guys, and we saw it coming, is that, well, you can't treat us the way that we've treated you, because that would be, you know, out of line and stuff. So I don't know who this Scott Jennings is. I only became aware of him recently on CNN, but he does not fit the mold of a CNN anchor or guest or talking head, whatever you want to call him. I mean, he had panels melting down last week when he said, well, you know, when you treat people like shit, you call them garbage, you know, and then you wonder why they didn't vote for you or your candidate or your party. So he did it again here, by the way.
These people have become pathetic. I mean, they stopped being comedians and they started becoming political activists. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel out here crying. I mean, it's pathetic. And so my question is, if you're going to have a late night comedy show, at some point, people might expect it to be funny and not just a constant political screed against one party. And I don't know that this activism for 4 more years is sustainable if you're going to market something as comedy, but the actual product is nothing more than sort of lowbrow political activism. Just one other point. During the Biden years, there was nobody that provided more comedy fodder possible than Joe Biden. I mean, he was a walking.
He was made fun of.
He was absolutely not.
He was
left alone. Harris was left alone.
No,
they got nothing. They didn't get 10% of what they deserved.
He's too old. He doesn't understand. I mean, he seemed like Gerald Ford the way they
never got SNL never got Biden right until Carvey came in the last couple of weeks.
They never got the White House.
Have you guys caught the pattern here, by the way, that each time that they have a guest get upset, not each time, but at least call it maybe 8 out of 10 times, it's a gay black guy. Does anybody else pick that up on CNN? I mean,
I got to bail out, man. My wife will kill me.
All right. Well, John and I will take it home.
All right.
Yeah.
See you guys.
I'm getting pretty close, so we need to probably put it on hyperdrive.
There we go. All right. Thanks again, Jeff. This one here is, I won't play it because John has voiced it several times tonight, but this essentially, Eric Trump brings the point home that John's been raising, in that legacy media is done. And people don't trust the media. They don't watch the media. They watch podcasts. And the people doing podcasts like us are the ones who are spreading the truth. And, you know, we're into a whole new age. And so what do you think of Chris Wallace saying, well, I'm not going to renew my contract with CNN. They didn't offer to renew it. And I think I'll do a podcast like Joe Rogan, because that seems to be where everybody is.
Yeah.
Who gives a flying fuck what Chris Wallace thinks or says?
You're going to have a lot of people try and start podcasts,
right,
so that they can push their own propaganda. The problem is people see through the fakeness. You can't, it's really hard to sit down with somebody for 3 hours and the truth not come out. That's the reality of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And people will get tired of that. The podcasting revolution marks the rebirth of citizen journalism, which is what this country was founded on, which is when they talk about freedom of the press. Back in those days, it was really a lot of citizens being the press. It was a lot of small town newspapers and people willing to go out, and essentially that's, podcasts are kind of like those, a rebirth of those newspapers in the early birth years of this country. And so the founders realized that was a needed thing. They realized that having the freedom to get those opinions and have conversations and report the news to people without any kind of system of silencing or suppressing your opinion. And slowly over time, corporations built a wall around that. And what has happened with podcasts is we have smashed that wall into powder. And now we're seeing the rebirth of, hey, you want to hear the news? Go find people that are reporting the truth and have a track record. And you can see that track record.
Yes.
You can see that, and that's the reality and that's why you build a following. That's why so many people tune into Joe Rogan and tune into Sean Ryan, is because they are giving objective interviews to their guests and they're having conversations and the truth is coming out. And because of that, I think that you no longer have gatekeepers. And that's the difference between us and the left, is we're like, yeah, no gatekeepers. Let people speak. More speech is better. Yeah. And let them hash out these ideas in the public square. And then we make up our minds.
100%.
And where the left is they want the gatekeepers. They are panicked that there are no gatekeepers.
Correct.
They are reeling because there are no gatekeepers, because now they're going to be exposed for who they really are.
Well, I've got some numbers coming up here in these last few months that show just how dramatic the drop off is for them. But I am going to play this next video, and it's hilarious. Like it's the first comment says it all. It's so sad that you have to explain comedy to liberals and communists.
Before we get into this, I am a comedian speaking on behalf of President Donald Trump and the Republican Party. So, disclaimer: jokes may include such things as sarcasm, satire, poking fun, parody, insensitive remarks about current subjects to get an easy laugh. Let it be known that you've been warned. If you suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, or a liberal who doesn't understand how jokes work, or in general, if jokes hurt your pussy, you're welcome to leave now.
That is so freaking
So good.
All right,
So stinking good.
Here's your numbers. MSNBC ratings collapse. Joy Reid down 54.6%. I won't read the rest. Look, Stephanie Rule down 67%. It's all the stuff that you just said and we've already touched on. But mainstream media is in a tailspin, and that's what happens when you're nothing more than a propaganda machine. This is the last video I'm going to play. Then the last few tabs, I'm just going to zip through them. But this is hilarious. I mean, this is walking through Manhattan after the election with a MAGA hat on. Look at that Tinkerbell. Anyway, I won't play the rest of it. That's a good one. This next one's in the brief. It's a 10-minute compilation. of highlights from election night from MSNBC. Go to patreon.com/survival dispatch. You can download the brief for free once you sign up, whether you're free or paid. Either way, you still get the brief. This next one here is worth listening to. This is actually, these two women are a great example. These two liberal women of having absolutely zero sense of humor. All right, so I'm going to throw this up while we speak to it briefly. So we're at the end, and that means that we're going to discuss what the homework is for our audience, action items that you all can do in light of all the things we discussed tonight, keeping in mind that the big topic that we started out on tonight is the real topic, which is going to work.
Before you go through this, just an FYI, we have Tony Blauer on our podcast this Friday. That episode will probably be dropping in about a week or so, but Tony's coming on our podcast. Last time him and Dave got together on Survival Dispatch, it was quite a conversation. So I'm actually not even going to be a part of that podcast. I'm just going to let him and Dave go at it for a couple of hours, because those guys really, like, he even actually posted on his X account, wow, that was an amazing conversation. I don't talk to many cops very often, but him and Dave really have a cool connection. So that's going to be an awesome episode.
He talks to cops on a daily basis. He just didn't get grilled by any of them.
Yeah.
Before, like, there's a big difference there. But Tony's a personal friend of mine, and that interview I did last week for Epic Times, I actually pulled him into it as well. And now it's turned into about 6 different interviews from the Epic Times. So the first one to be published will be Tony and I on sudden violence and situational awareness, which is why it's up here. Okay. So homework, what can our audience do in light of what we've discussed this evening? Thinking again at the topic at the beginning, which was, Mexican cartels, drug cartels. So number one, take Tony Blauer's No Fear workshop online. There's a link in the brief, and I'll throw it in the video descriptions on a few platforms at least. This is normally $100. We have a code that gets you 50% off. Sorry, it's normally $200. You get it for $99. But this is where it starts as far as situational awareness and reaction begins. And you do it at your own pace. It's not really hard to get through. You get information from Tony you can't get anywhere else. He is the global preeminent subject matter expert on sudden violence and situational awareness, bar none. Ask anybody who's trained with them, and they will tell you that. All right, next thing, make sure that your EDC bag is up to speed. We talked a lot with regards to get home bags during the election cycle. That's still a thing. We can't lose, lose the visibility, or the thoughts on terrorists being in our country right now. That something bad will happen at some point in time. It's not if, it's when. Even the FBI agrees with that. So when you go through your bag, make sure that you go to nextdistro.org. So let me share that website right here, nextdistro.org. And when you go to that website and you go up here, it says get supplies, click on Narcan, then pick your state, and it'll connect you to an agency in your state. And when you fill it out, when we did it, we had 2 doses of Narcan 2 days later from them. And so actually there's 2 doses coming in each box. So 2 boxes, 2 doses each. You should always carry at least 2 with you. But if you're exposed to fentanyl, because the cartels bringing this drug in and putting it in everything, and if you ingest it, if it comes in through a membrane like your eyes, or you have a physical cut, you're going to want to have Narcan. And this way, number one, it doesn't cost you anything. Number two, if you go to your doctor and they say, oh, yeah, for sure, I'll write you a script for Narcan so that you can have it in your EDC bag. Guess what? As soon as the script's been written, now anytime anybody looks at you from an insurance perspective, they think you're a drug addict because you've had, Narcan given to you. Let's get into the next one here. Revisit your IFAC and making sure that you've got your first aid kit in order. Stock up on these little guys, Sawyer minis, 100,000 gallon capacity. I've cut these suckers open. I'm amazed at the water filtration in these. All the SEER guys, like Grand Thumb, And anybody who's worked Spec Ops will tell you they're the bomb. We've got more information coming on these. But the reason I say a weight's been lifted off my shoulders, I got so discouraged at so many water treatment products being sent to us and failing miserably that when Sawyer came along, I was just blown away. You can buy it off their website. You can buy it on Amazon. There's tons of retailers, but this is the Sawyer Mini. You should have at least one of these in your EDC bag. Beyond that, you want to check everything that's battery powered. You want to recommend Survival Dispatch News to your circle for the reasons John and I just discussed, which speaks to awareness of the truth, what's actually going on out there. And last one, write down. So this we're going to get into this another video. Actually, I'm just going to preface it. You need to have a plan that when you encounter sudden violence in public, that you have a plan. You've shared it with your family. I'll give you one tidbit, and then we'll have a whole video on this coming up. But if, let's say, an active shooter situation breaks out and your family is with you, you have a code word. Avalanche is a good one. When you say avalanche, wife and kids go that way. You go the opposite way while you're drawing your gun, and you keep them out of the line of fire. There's all kinds of stuff to that. Beyond that, John, I think we're down to the please mash the like button and the conflict of question. We're done.
Yeah, I would add also, we have a great opportunity. I think that a lot of gun legislation, gun grabbing has been stayed at least for 4 years, and hopefully we get some people appointed to the ATF. Brandon Herrera, please. And we actually reverse some of these insane policies from the ATF. But with that in mind, don't forget that the most important thing you can do is train. And so we're getting ready to work. Me and Dave, actually, by Thanksgiving, we will have the 2025 training schedule up for Righteous Savages. We have a lot of really cool things coming down the pike, and we hope that you guys will check us out. Once that schedule's up, I will let you guys know so you guys can get in on those trainings. We've got a lot of really cool things coming down the pike. So don't forget that training. That's probably the most important thing. You have to, anybody that ever played sports, you have to practice. You have to understand. You have to understand situations and how you're going to react to them. Your body's never going to go where your mind hasn't gone. And we like to give you the tools to think through those scenarios.
Yeah, and it's worth adding to that it doesn't mean you have to go out and learn martial arts. Doesn't mean you have to go run a marathon. Doesn't mean any of that stuff at all. You work within your limits. Mm-hmm. So, if you're disabled one way or another, maybe you've got some health issues, heart problems, whatever the case may be, you can still improve. And by what John's getting at is the old Sun Tzu adage, human beings never rise to the occasion. They fall to the level of training. No training is bad training, number one. Number two, this is a cardinal sin that I see people doing frequently. They take their pistol, they go to the gun range, they dump their EDC ammo, they put their full metal jacket in, they shoot it down range. If it's got an optic, either them or somebody else dials in the optic for them, and then they're done, and they dump the FMJ out of their mags, they put their EDC back in, and they go. Okay, well, number one, your gun will not behave the same with different types of ammunition, especially if you're going from self-defense ammo to just ball ammo, full metal jacket. Radical difference. Shameless plug for Pilgrim ammunition. Over 2,000 feet per second out of any of my pistols, 2,500 feet per second out of a PCC, 50 grain projectile. Hits with about 500 pounds of kinetic energy. Disperses everything horizontally, but weighs next to nothing. The first time I loaded my wife's pistol, and I gave it to her, she was like, yeah, you didn't load it. I'm like, yeah, I did, because the 50 grain projectiles are up to 2 or 3 times lighter than regular ammunition's concerned. But here's the thing, 35% reduction in recoil. That's what the lab says. It's very noticeable. And you don't get the muzzle flip out of it that you get out of ball ammo. It just stays there. It's counterintuitive, but plus P ammo traveling like that is much nicer and easier to shoot. So you got to practice the way that you play. The next part is, and John is more of an expert than I am, is that these are perishable skills. This is why I put 1,000 rounds downrange every single week with a 300 blackout SBR. They could be live rounds. They could be, 8mm kinetic rounds from a training rifle. It could be a Blackbeard Mantis X, amongst other tools that I have. And if you don't use them, you will lose it. And all you got to do is go look at videos online. The one I reference most frequently is, I don't know, 6 months ago or so. Guy's got a 1-ton dually. It's all done out with toolboxes on the back. Gets out of his truck. Bad guy gets in the truck and steals the truck. Construction worker standing there 5 feet away from the carjacker. The door is open. Pulls his pistol. Takes 6 shots and missed all 6 of them. Did not hit the guy once. He backs up 100 feet. Puts it to the floor. Runs the guy over who tried to shoot him and kills him. DRT. Dead right there. So if you've never shot with an elevated heart rate, you've never shot under stress, the chances that you're even going to have any accuracy are very, very slim. And a number I've mentioned many, many times on our podcast, 70% of Floridians every year who are killed by gunshot wound that did not commit suicide are killed with their own gun. They pull the pistol, they go into condition black, they freeze up, bad guy takes their gun away, boom, shoots them, sort of thing. So again, you don't have to go out and do all these crazy exercises. If you can, that's great. There's nothing wrong. If you can improve your cardio and your weight situation and your strength, by all means. If you can't do it for whatever reason, you can get training tools. You can use them inside the house. I've got lasers in my pistols.
Yep. And one thing that I'll add to that, one thing that we are working on feverishly is we are doing our own Patreon of Righteous Savages. We're going to have complete training programs for firearms on there for beginner to advanced, so you can do and learn things from the comfort of your own home with training pistols like what Chris has there.
This is a Glock 19. This thing here is called an Accurizer. It is sound activated. This has a dry fire magazine in it, so it resets the trigger and you'll be able to hear it. So what it does, each time it does that, it activates this laser. I've got all sorts of laser targets that, they flop over and make a noise, but you can run this in any gun because it's sound activated. They're not very expensive, $69 on Amazon. The dry fire mags are about $100, but again, practice some more if you really care about self-defense. And if you can do it while you have an elevated heart rate for mixing in some exercise, even better. All right, conflict of question, Joe.
Yep.
It's been a long one.
Go ahead.
You're the one who found it. You claimed it.
Derek's alternative lifestyle choice would have alienated Gordon before the collapse, but Gordon wasn't as discerning in the new world. Does gender and sexual orientation affect your perception of combat readiness? Why and why not? I'll let you go first.
No, it's easy. It's really easy. Yes and no. So if somebody is gay, I don't really give a shit. I mean, I always think back to that guy, Seth, whatever his name was, who beat the shit out of Kimbo Slice in Orlando in that UFC fight. I don't care if you're gay or not. It really makes no difference to me. But if you're transgender, absolutely not. If it's a mental illness and you're not in my tribe, end of story. You need to be treated by mental health professionals. And if it's just straight up gender, man versus woman, it's going to depend on the situation. If the woman is athletic like my wife and can handle herself, no problem. If she's 100 pounds soaking wet and couldn't fight her way out of a paper bag and isn't proficient with guns, absolutely not. So it's a case-by-case basis. It's yes and no. But one of the things I'm really looking forward to in the Trump administration is getting rid of DEI and transgender bullshit from our military and other government institutions.
De-incentivize mental illness. And I would actually, that's almost identical to the answer that I had for this. So we're simpatico with that. And I think that, it's really a case-by-case basis. I know some very strong, very capable gay men, and I know some that are kind of wimpy. So it really depends on the, and I know some straight men that are very strong and capable and some straight men that are very wimpy. So
exactly. All right. Well, I guess that's it. I will be back tomorrow night. I'm trying to look at my schedule to see who we've got. We got a big one tomorrow night. We've got Patrick Byrne with us tomorrow night. So I did slip my mind. I've been so busy, but yeah, tomorrow night, big one. Patrick Byrne. Thursday evening, another big one. Major Mike Hall and Dr. James, who he's been working with in the relief efforts in North Carolina from Hurricane Helene. And then Friday night, CCW Safe. Saturday night, I'll probably do that one by myself like usual. Sunday night, Brad Wozny comes back. Monday night, and if it's not Monday night, it'll be another day next week. Mike Glover will be back on, my good buddy, and one of my favorite Green Berets for that matter. And that's it, John. We're done. Over and out.
God bless America.
Okay, what are you? You guys steal my dang thunder on everything. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and God bless America.
If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.